When a billionaire CEO walked into a crowded restaurant on the worst night of her life, she never expected the man who would change everything to be sitting alone at a corner table, asking for nothing but peace. What started as a simple request to share a meal became the moment that shattered years of manipulation, exposed the toxic grip of a dangerous ex, and proved that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stand up and say, "Enough." Stay with me until the end of this story, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this tale has traveled. You won't believe what happens next. The Friday night chaos of Marcello's Italian restaurant reached its peak at exactly 7:47 p.m. Every table was occupied, every booth filled with the animated chatter of weekend celebrants. The sound of clinking glasses, bursts of laughter, and the aromatic symphony of garlic, basil, and fresh-baked bread created an atmosphere that was simultaneously welcoming and overwhelming. The hostess stand had become a battlefield, with a growing line of hungry patrons checking their watches and shifting their weight impatiently as they waited for tables that seemed like they might never open up. In the back corner of the restaurant, near the window that overlooked the bustling city street, Evan Brooks sat alone at a table for two. At 32 years old, he carried the particular kind of exhaustion that only single parents truly understand, a bone-deep weariness that went beyond physical fatigue and settled somewhere in the soul. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, not from carelessness, but from the countless times his 5-year-old daughter Emma had grabbed onto it during their evening routine. His shirt, a simple navy button-down, was clean but wrinkled in that way that suggested it had been pulled from a dryer hours ago and never quite made it to an ironing board. Evan's eyes, a warm hazel that seemed to hold both kindness and a quiet sadness, scanned the menu without really seeing it. He'd earned this dinner through sheer survival of the day. It had started at 6 a.m. with Emma's enthusiastic wake-up call that involved jumping on his bed and announcing that she wanted pancakes shaped like elephants. The pancakes had turned out looking more like misshapen clouds, but Emma had declared them perfect anyway, with the generous forgiveness only children possess. Work had been its own marathon. As a senior project coordinator for a mid-sized construction firm, Evan spent his days juggling timelines, managing contractors, and solving the endless stream of problems that arose on job sites. Today had featured a supplier delay, a client who wanted to completely redesign a load-bearing wall 2 weeks before completion, and a scheduling conflict that had required him to personally call 15 different subcontractors to reorganize the entire next week's workflow. He'd picked Emma up from after-school care at 5:30, endured the 15-minute negotiation about why they couldn't have ice cream for dinner, supervised homework that involved a surprising amount of drama about the letter Q, managed bath time, which somehow resulted in more water on the floor than in the tub, read 3 bedtime stories, and finally delivered Emma to his sister Rachel's house for the sleepover they'd planned weeks ago. Rachel had taken one look at him and said, "You look like you need a drink and a dark room." Evan had laughed tiredly. "I'll settle for a quiet dinner, alone. Somewhere I can eat without cutting anyone else's food first." And so here he sat, in a restaurant that was anything but quiet, simply grateful to be making decisions that affected no one but himself. He'd chosen Marcello's specifically because it was far enough from his neighborhood that he wouldn't run into anyone he knew, close enough to Rachel's that the drive home wouldn't feel like another task to complete. The waiter, a young man named Thomas, with an apologetic smile, had already apologized twice for the wait. "We're absolutely slammed tonight, sir. It might be a while before I can take your order." "Take your time," Evan had replied genuinely. "I'm in no rush." And he wasn't. For the first time in what felt like months, Evan had nowhere to be. No one depending on him. No schedule to maintain. He could sit here for hours if he wanted, watching the controlled chaos of the restaurant, letting the conversations around him blur into white noise. He'd just decided on the chicken marsala when the atmosphere at the hostess stand shifted. The crowd parted slightly, and Evan found himself watching, not intentionally, just happening to look up at the right moment, as a woman walked through the door. Sophia Langford moved through the restaurant entrance with the kind of presence that wasn't about demanding attention, but simply commanded it naturally. At 30 years old, she possessed a beauty that went beyond conventional prettiness. There was something in the way she carried herself, a combination of confidence and exhaustion that created its own gravitational pull. Her dark hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders, slightly disheveled from what had clearly been a long day. She wore a tailored charcoal blazer over a cream silk blouse and dark jeans, The kind of calculated casual that cost more than most people's monthly rent, but was designed to look effortless. A simple gold necklace at her throat and small diamond studs in her ears were her only jewelry. Her heels clicked softly against the tile floor as she approached the hostess stand. But it was her eyes that told the real story. They were a striking blue-gray, the color of storm clouds over the ocean, and they held a weariness that matched Evan's own. This was a woman who had fought battles today, who had made difficult decisions, who had smiled through gritted teeth more times than she could count. The hostess, a cheerful woman named Maria who'd been handling the Friday rush with impressive grace, greeted Sophia with genuine regret in her voice. "Good evening. Welcome to Marcello's. Unfortunately, we're completely booked tonight. The wait for a table is currently about an hour and 15 minutes, possibly longer." Sophia's shoulders dropped almost imperceptibly. "An hour?" She glanced around the packed restaurant, and Evan watched something flicker across her face. Not annoyance or entitlement, but a kind of desperate disappointment that suggested this meal had been the one thing she'd been holding on to all day. "I'm so sorry," Maria continued. "Friday nights are always our busiest, and we had several large parties tonight. I can put your name on the list if you'd like to wait at the bar." Sophia glanced toward the bar, which was 3 deep with waiting patrons, all jockeying for the bartender's attention. The idea of fighting through that crowd, of making small talk with strangers, of being recognized, because she was always recognized eventually, seemed to drain what little energy she had left. "No, that's okay. Thank you anyway." Sophia turned to leave, and Evan watched her pause at the door, one hand on the handle, clearly gathering the will to step back out into the night and find somewhere else, start this whole process over again. He didn't think about it, didn't calculate the social ramifications, or consider whether this was appropriate. He simply acted on the instinct that had been honed by 5 years of single fatherhood, the ability to recognize when someone needed help, and the willingness to offer it without expectation. "Excuse me," Evan called out, his voice carrying just enough to cut through the ambient noise without shouting. Sophia turned, her expression cautious. Their eyes met across the crowded restaurant, and for a moment the noise seemed to fade. Evan gestured to the empty chair across from him. "You're welcome to share this table, if you want." The offer hung in the air between them. Sophia stood frozen, clearly processing the unexpected invitation. This wasn't how her world usually worked. People didn't offer her things without wanting something in return. Every interaction in her life came with strings attached, with calculations and negotiations and unspoken expectations. She hesitated, glancing back at the door, then at the crowded restaurant, then finally back at Evan. "Are you sure? I don't want to intrude." "I'm sure," Evan replied simply. He gestured to the menu in front of him. "I was just about to order." "You'd actually be doing me a favor. I'm terrible at eating alone. Always feel like I'm forgetting something." It was a lie, kindly told. Evan had become an expert at eating alone, at doing everything alone. But something about this woman's exhaustion spoke to him, recognized something in himself. Sophia made her decision. She walked across the restaurant with purposeful steps, weaving between tables and waiters with practiced ease. As she approached, Evan stood, a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy that surprised her. Men in her world didn't stand when she approached. They were too busy trying to prove they saw her as an equal, which often meant overcompensating in the other direction. "Thank you," she said as she slipped into the chair across from him. "Really. You have no idea how much I needed this." "Rough day?" Evan asked, settling back into his own seat. Sophia laughed, but it was a tired sound. "You could say that. How about you?" "Long day," Evan replied, "the kind where you count down the hours until you can just stop." "I know that feeling very well." Sophia accepted a menu from Maria, who had materialized with impressive speed, her eyebrows slightly raised at this unexpected pairing, but her professionalism intact. "Can I start you folks with something to drink?" Maria asked. "Red wine," Sophia said immediately. "Whatever you recommend, a large glass." "Same," Evan agreed. "Why not?" After Maria departed, a comfortable silence settled over the table. It was strange. Neither of them felt the pressure to immediately fill the air with small talk. They were two exhausted people sharing a space, and somehow that was enough. Sophia studied the menu, though Evan noticed she kept glancing up at him when she thought he wasn't looking. He understood the assessment. She was trying to figure him out, place him in some category that made sense. He was doing the same with her, though more subtly. "I'm Sophia, by the way," she finally offered, setting down her menu. "Evan." He extended his hand across the table and they shook. Her grip was firm, businesslike. His was warm, steady. "What do you do, Evan?" The question was automatic, the kind of thing you ask strangers in restaurants, but Sophia immediately looked like she regretted it. "Sorry, that's such a boring question. You don't have to—" "No, it's fine," Evan interrupted gently. "I work in construction, project coordination. Basically, I spend my days making sure buildings get finished on time and don't fall down." "Sounds stressful." "It has its moments. What about you?" Sophia hesitated for just a fraction of a second. "Business. Real estate mostly. A lot of meetings, a lot of decisions, a lot of people who need things from me." The last part slipped out before she could stop it, revealing more than she'd intended. Evan nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, I get that. Different world, but I get it. Everyone always needs something, and you're the one who has to have the answers." "Exactly." Sophia's eyes widened slightly, surprised to be understood so quickly. "And by the end of the day, you've given away so much of yourself to everyone else that there's nothing left for you. Which is why you're here." It wasn't a question. "Which is why I'm here." Sophia smiled, and it was the first real smile Evan had seen from her. It transformed her face, softened the edges of exhaustion. "I just wanted 1 hour where nobody knew my name or wanted something from me." "Well then," Evan said, raising his water glass in a mock toast, "to being nobody." Sophia laughed genuinely this time and clinked her water glass against his. "To being nobody." Thomas returned with their wine, 2 generous glasses of a Tuscan red that gleamed like dark rubies in the soft lighting. They ordered their meals without much ceremony. Sophia chose the risotto with wild mushrooms. Evan stuck with his original plan of chicken marsala. As they sipped their wine, the conversation began to unfold naturally, like a flower opening in the evening light. They didn't exchange life stories or delve into deep personal revelations. Instead, they talked about the small things, the daily textures of life that rarely made it into conventional conversation. Sophia mentioned that she'd been listening to a lot of jazz lately, finding something soothing in the improvisation, the way the musicians communicated without words. "My daughter loves music," Evan found himself saying. "She's 5 and she's convinced she's going to be a rock star." Last week, she performed a concert for her stuffed animals that involved a wooden spoon, a pot lid, and what she claimed was interpretive drumming. Sophia's face lit up. "You have a daughter? That's wonderful." "She's the best thing in my life," Evan said simply, and the truth of it resonated in every word. "Also the most exhausting thing, but mostly the best thing." "A single parent?" The question was gentle, not probing. "For about 3 years now. Her mother, it didn't work out. We co-parent when we can, but mostly it's just me and Emma figuring things out together." "That must be incredibly difficult." Evan shrugged. "It's life. You do what you have to do for the people you love. I'm sure you understand that." Sophia looked down at her wine glass, swirling the liquid thoughtfully. "Sometimes I'm not sure if I do what I do for love or obligation. Or maybe they've become the same thing." Before Evan could respond, their food arrived. The plates were works of art, the kind of presentation that made you pause before diving in. Steam rose from Sophia's risotto, carrying the earthy aroma of porcini and truffle oil. Evan's chicken was perfectly plated, the marsala sauce glistening, accompanied by roasted vegetables that had been arranged with clear care. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the kind of silence that only exists between people who are comfortable enough not to force conversation. The food was exceptional, but more than that, the moment felt exceptional. In a crowded restaurant surrounded by noise and chaos, they'd created a small bubble of peace. "This is exactly what I needed," Sophia said softly. "Just normal, simple. Thank you for sharing your table." "Thank you for taking the risk," Evan replied. "For all you knew, I could have been the most boring dinner companion in history." "Something told me you wouldn't be." Sophia took another sip of her wine. "You have kind eyes. That sounds silly, but it's true. When you offered to share the table, your eyes said you meant it without wanting anything in exchange. You'd be surprised how rare that is." Evan felt his cheeks warm slightly. I just know what it's like to need a break from everything. Figured you might too. They fell into another conversation about books. Sophia confessed she rarely had time to read anymore, which she hated because she'd been a voracious reader as a child. Evan talked about reading to Emma every night, how they'd just finished Charlotte's Web, and Emma had cried for 20 minutes about the spider. She made me promise we'd read it again because she wants to make sure Charlotte's babies are okay, Evan said with a smile. So I guess we're starting it over tomorrow night. You're a good father, Sophia observed. She's lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one, Evan corrected. She reminds me every day what actually matters. When you're responsible for someone else's whole world, you can't afford to lose perspective. Sophia set down her fork, her expression thoughtful. What if you feel like you've already lost it? The perspective, I mean. What if you've been moving so fast for so long that you can't remember what mattered in the first place? Evan considered the question seriously. I think you stop. Even if it's just for an hour, sitting in a restaurant with a stranger. You stop and you remember that you're more than your responsibilities. You're more than what people need from you. Is that what you're doing tonight? Stopping? Trying to, Evan admitted. My sister took Emma for a sleepover, practically forced me to take the night off. Said I needed to remember what it felt like to just be me for a few hours. Smart sister. She has her moments. Evan smiled. What made you choose tonight to stop? Sophia's expression shifted, something darker flickering across her features. I had a meeting that went very badly. The kind of meeting where you realize that someone you thought you could trust has been undermining you for months. Where you have to smile and be professional while your entire business strategy is being criticized by people who don't understand the first thing about what you're trying to build. That sounds infuriating. It was. But the worst part was realizing that the person leading the criticism was someone I used to, someone from my past, someone who should have been on my side but couldn't resist the opportunity to make me look weak in front of the board. Evan heard the pain beneath the anger, the betrayal that cut deeper than professional disappointment. Someone you cared about. Someone I thought I cared about. Now I'm not sure if it was ever real or if I was just convenient for him. Another acquisition to add to his portfolio. Sophia shook her head. Sorry, this is exactly the kind of thing I didn't want to think about tonight. Then we won't think about it, Evan said simply. Tell me something good instead, something that made you smile this week. Sophia blinked, clearly surprised by the redirect. She thought for a moment, and then a small smile played at her lips. There's a woman who works in our building, cleaning crew. Her name is Rosa, and she's been there for 15 years. Every morning, she stops by my office and we chat for a few minutes about nothing important. Her grandchildren, the weather, her garden. Last week, she brought me tomatoes from her garden. Said they were the best of the season and I needed to try them. Did you? I made a caprese salad that night. She was right. They were incredible. And the whole time I was eating it, I was thinking about how Rosa has worked in that building for 15 years, and most people don't even know her name. But she knows things about me that my business partners don't. She asks how I'm doing and actually listens to the answer. She sounds wonderful. She is. And she reminds me that success isn't just about quarterly earnings and market share. It's about the small connections, the people who see you as human instead of a title. Sophia paused, studying Evan's face. You do that too, you know. Do what? See people as human. I'm a complete stranger who crashed your quiet dinner, and you're treating me like I'm someone worth knowing. You are someone worth knowing, Evan said matter-of-factly. Everyone is, until they prove otherwise. And you haven't done anything to prove otherwise. Their conversation continued as they finished their meals. They talked about movies. Sophia admitted she hadn't been to a theater in over a year, while Evan recounted his recent experience taking Emma to see an animated film about talking animals, which had resulted in Emma announcing she wanted to learn animal language. They discussed the city, the way it changed depending on which neighborhood you were in, how it could feel like a dozen different cities layered on top of each other. Sophia mentioned a park she used to visit as a child, where her mother would take her to feed the ducks. Evan talked about his favorite playground with Emma, the one with the blue slides and the sandbox that was always full of determined children building elaborate castles. The wine flowed easily, the conversation even easier. Neither of them checked their phones, neither made excuses to leave. The restaurant continued its Friday night symphony around them, but inside their small corner, time seemed to move differently, slower, more purposeful. Thomas cleared their plates and offered the dessert menu, which they declined in favor of coffee. As they waited for it to arrive, Sophia found herself studying Evan with open curiosity. "Can I ask you something?" she ventured. "Of course." "Why did you really invite me to sit here? You could have had your quiet dinner alone like you wanted. Why complicate it?" Evan thought about his answer carefully. "Honestly, because you looked the way I feel most days, like you'd been strong for everyone else all day and just needed one place where you could let that go. And I thought, even if we don't say much, even if we just sit here and eat in silence, maybe that would be easier than doing it completely alone." "You were right," Sophia said softly. "This is exactly what I needed." The coffee arrived, dark and fragrant, served in ceramic cups that held the heat perfectly. They doctored them according to preference, Evan with a touch of cream, Sophia black with 1 sugar, and settled into what felt like the final act of their unexpected evening. "What happens after this?" Sophia asked, the question carrying more weight than a simple inquiry about the rest of the night. "I drive home. Probably watch something mindless on TV until I fall asleep on the couch," Evan said. "Wake up tomorrow morning and pick up Emma, who will have 1,000 stories about the sleepover and will probably be running on sugar and 0 sleep. What about you?" "I go back to my apartment, which is beautiful and empty. Maybe look over some contracts I brought home. Probably pour another glass of wine and sit on my balcony, looking at the city and wondering when everything got so complicated." "Does it have to be complicated?" Sophia smiled sadly. "In my world, everything is complicated. Every decision has consequences. Every relationship has ulterior motives. Every moment of peace is temporary because there's always another crisis waiting." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, seeking its warmth. "But it's the life I built. I made choices that led me here, and I can't pretend I didn't want this at one point. The power, the success, the ability to make things happen. I just didn't realize that getting it all would mean giving up so much else." Evan listened without judgment, recognizing the complexity of what she was saying. This wasn't about rich people problems or first-world complaints. This was about a person who'd achieved everything she was supposed to want and discovered that achievement didn't protect you from loneliness or regret. "I don't have answers for you," he said honestly. "My problems are different. I worry about making rent, about whether Emma's eating enough vegetables, about whether I'm screwing her up by not giving her the 2-parent household she deserves. But I think, regardless of the scale, we're all just trying to figure out how to be happy while doing what we think we're supposed to do." "And have you figured it out?" "Not even close," Evan admitted with a self-deprecating laugh. "But I'm learning that the moments that matter most are usually the ones you don't plan. Like tonight, like a 5-year-old's stuffed animal concert. Like tomatoes from Rose's garden. The big achievements are great, but they're not where life actually happens." Sophia absorbed this, her expression thoughtful. "You're very wise for someone who just wanted a quiet dinner." "I'm not wise. I'm just tired enough, to be honest." They finished their coffee as the restaurant began to thin out slightly. Some of the earlier dinner crowd had departed, though the tables were quickly filled by the next wave. The energy shifted from early evening anticipation to late evening celebration. "I should probably go," Sophia said, though she made no move to stand. "You came here for peace and quiet, and I've talked your ear off." "I'm glad you did," Evan said sincerely. "This was much better than sitting alone with my thoughts." Sophia reached for her purse, pulling out a sleek leather wallet. Evan shook his head. "This one's on me. Consider it the cost of good company." "I can't let you—" "You can, and you will," Evan interrupted gently but firmly. "Please, let me do this one thing without negotiation." Sophia hesitated, clearly unaccustomed to not paying her own way, but something in Evan's expression stopped her from arguing. "Thank you, really, for all of it." They were preparing to stand when the energy in the restaurant shifted dramatically. A man walked through the door with the kind of entrance that demanded attention: expensive suit, designer shoes, perfectly styled hair, and an expression that suggested he owned every room he entered. Evan watched Sophia's entire body language change in an instant. Her shoulders tensed, her jaw tightened, and the warm openness that had characterized the entire evening vanished behind a wall of cold composure. "Oh no," she whispered, and in those two words, Evan heard genuine fear mixed with anger and resignation. The man's eyes scanned the restaurant with predatory efficiency. When they landed on Sophia, a slow smile spread across his face, the kind of smile that had nothing to do with warmth and everything to do with opportunity. He began walking toward their table with deliberate, unhurried steps. Every movement was calculated to project confidence and control. This was a man who was used to getting what he wanted, who viewed every interaction as a negotiation he intended to win. "Sophia," he said, his voice carrying a false warmth that made Evan's skin crawl. "What a pleasant surprise." "Victor," Sophia's voice was flat, emotionless. "What are you doing here?" Victor Hale, because of course his name was Victor, Evan thought with dark humor, pulled out a chair from a nearby empty table without asking and positioned it at the end of theirs, creating an unwanted triangle. He sat down with the casual entitlement of someone who'd never been told no in his life. "Having dinner, same as you," Victor replied smoothly. His eyes flickered to Evan with dismissive assessment before returning to Sophia. "Though I must say I'm surprised to see you dining at such a quaint establishment, and with company I don't recognize. How unlike you." Evan remained silent, watching the interaction with growing understanding. This was the person from Sophia's past, the one she'd mentioned during dinner, the one who'd undermined her in front of the board. And from the way Sophia had transformed into someone barely recognizable, this relationship had left scars that ran deep. "I'm having a private dinner, Victor," Sophia said, her voice controlled but carrying a warning. "We have nothing to discuss." "Oh, I think we do," Victor countered, settling back in his chair like he had all the time in the world, especially after this afternoon's board meeting. Some interesting votes were cast, some interesting alliances were formed. This is not the time or place. Come now, Sophia. Surely your friend here wouldn't mind if we discussed a bit of business? Victor's eyes slid to Evan again, this time with thinly veiled contempt. "Unless this is more than a professional acquaintance? How very democratic of you, expanding your social circle beyond the usual echelons." And there it was. The first direct insult wrapped in false courtesy. Evan felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. He'd dealt with men like this before. Men who wielded words like weapons and expected their targets to fight back emotionally, giving them ammunition. Sophia's hand, which had been resting on the table, curled into a fist. "This conversation is over. Leave, Victor." "I'm simply trying to understand your new strategy," Victor pressed, leaning forward slightly. "First, you make that disastrous presentation this afternoon, completely misreading the board's concerns, and now you're here with—" He gestured vaguely at Evan. "Whoever this is. It's very unlike you to slum it, darling. Are you having some kind of crisis?" The casual cruelty in his tone, the way he said darling like an insult, the implication that Evan wasn't worth acknowledging as a person. It all painted a clear picture. Victor Hale was a man who maintained control through systematic diminishment of everyone around him. Evan finally spoke, his voice quiet but carrying clearly. "I think the lady asked you to leave." Victor's attention snapped to him with sharp focus, as if noticing him properly for the first time. "I'm sorry. Did someone ask for your input? This is a private conversation between Sophia and myself. Our history gives me certain privileges in her life." "Your history ended," Sophia said, her voice shaking slightly with suppressed anger. "You need to leave. Now." But Victor was on a roll now, sensing blood in the water. "Does he know, Sophia? Does your new friend here know who you are? What you're worth? Or did you feed him some pretty lie about being a regular person, having a regular dinner? Because that's your pattern, isn't it? Pretending to be something you're not, letting people get close, and then discarding them when they've served their purpose?" "That's enough," Evan said, his voice hardening. "Is it?" Victor's smile was sharp and dangerous. "Here's what I think is happening. Sophia is having a rough week. We all saw that train wreck of a presentation today, and she's looking for some kind of ego boost, some uncomplicated admiration from someone who doesn't know better. And you, my friend, are exactly the type she favors for these little episodes, just ordinary enough to make her feel authentic for a few hours." Sophia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "We're leaving." But Victor reached out and gently caught her wrist, not rough enough to be assault, but firm enough to be controlling. It was a move he'd clearly made before, a familiar gesture of possession. Don't make a scene, darling, he said softly, but loud enough for Evan to hear. You know how that looks. We both know you're just going through one of your phases. Remember what happened last time you tried to prove you were different from your world? Remember how that ended? Evan saw something break in Sophia's eyes. Not tears, but something worse. A kind of defeated recognition, as if Victor had just confirmed something she'd been afraid might be true. And in that moment, Evan Brooks made a decision. Not a heroic one, not a dramatic one, but a simple human decision that someone needed to stand up and say that this wasn't okay. He stood slowly, calmly, his full height and presence suddenly filling the space. At 6'1", with the solid build of someone who'd worked construction sites for years, Evan didn't need to puff himself up or make threats. He simply existed in the space with absolute certainty. Take your hand off her, Evan said quietly. The restaurant noise seemed to fade slightly around them. Nearby tables were starting to notice the tension. Victor looked up at Evan with amused condescension. Or what exactly? You'll make a scene in a public restaurant? Please, do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I know exactly who I'm dealing with, Evan replied, his voice steady and calm. I'm dealing with someone who thinks he can control people through intimidation and manipulation. Someone who measures his worth by how small he can make everyone else feel. And I'm telling you for the last time to take your hand off her and leave. Victor's expression shifted, calculation running behind his eyes. He was clearly weighing his options, trying to determine how far he could push this situation. Sophia found her voice stronger now. Victor, let go of me. For a long moment, nobody moved. The entire corner of the restaurant seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Then Victor released Sophia's wrist with deliberate slowness, a smile playing at his lips that suggested this was his choice, his control. He stood, adjusting his suit jacket with exaggerated care. This isn't over, Sophia, he said softly. Monday's board meeting will be very interesting. I hope your new friend here is worth what it's going to cost you professionally. He looked at Evan one more time, his expression mixing pity and contempt. Enjoy the rest of your evening, both of you. I'm sure it will be very memorable. Victor walked away with the same deliberate confidence he'd arrived with, not hurrying, not showing any sign of retreat. He was making it clear that he was leaving by choice, not because he'd been forced out. As soon as he was gone, Sophia sank back into her chair, her hands trembling slightly. Evan sat down as well, adrenaline still coursing through his system, but his exterior calm. I'm so sorry, Sophia whispered. I should have left as soon as I saw him. I should have known he'd do something like this. I've put you in the middle of something you don't understand. Are you okay? Evan asked, ignoring her apology. Sophia took a shaky breath. I don't know. He's always been good at finding pressure points, at saying exactly the thing that makes you question yourself. Everything he said was garbage, Evan stated flatly. You know that, right? Every word was designed to make you feel small and him feel powerful. None of it was true. How do you know? You don't know me. You don't know what happened between us. I know enough, Evan said firmly. I know that in the 2 hours we've spent together, you've been kind, thoughtful, and genuine. I know that whatever he said you did, whatever pattern he claims you have, it doesn't match the person I've been talking to all evening. And I know that a man who would grab someone's wrist to keep them at a table is someone whose opinion should be immediately discarded. Sophia looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears she was too proud to release. Thank you for standing up. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, Evan corrected gently. I have a daughter, and someday she's going to be in situations where men like Victor try to make her feel like she doesn't have the right to say no, to walk away, to exist without permission. If I can't stand up in a restaurant when I see it happening in front of me, how can I teach her that she deserves better? The simple truth of his words seemed to cut through Sophia's defenses more effectively than any elaborate declaration. She nodded slowly, absorbing this. Thomas appeared, having clearly witnessed the entire interaction from a professional distance. Is everything all right? Do you need me to speak to management about having that gentleman removed if he returns? We're fine, thank you, Evan said. He caught Thomas's eye and pulled out his credit card. Just the check, please. As Thomas departed to process payment, Sophia tried to compose herself. visibly pulling back together the professional armor she'd let down during dinner. "You don't have to do that," Evan said softly. "Put the walls back up, I mean. Not with me." "I don't know how else to be right now," Sophia admitted. "When Victor shows up, when he starts picking at old wounds, my first instinct is to go cold, to protect myself." "That makes sense. But he's gone now. It's just us again." Sophia managed a weak smile. "Except now you know that my life is complicated and messy and full of men like Victor who won't let go of their control." "Oh, everyone's life is complicated and messy," Evan countered. "Mine included. The difference is some people weaponize it and some people just try to survive it." Thomas returned with the receipt, which Evan signed quickly. As he slipped his credit card back into his wallet, he looked at Sophia with concern. "Can I walk you to your car or call you a cab? I just want to make sure you're safe." Sophia started to protest, to say she was fine, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the genuine concern in Evan's eyes. Maybe it was the exhaustion of maintaining her independence as armor. Maybe it was just the simple desire to not be alone for a few more minutes. "I'd appreciate that," she said quietly. "Thank you." They stood together, Sophia collecting her purse and jacket. As they walked toward the exit, Evan noticed several patrons watching them with curiosity, the scene with Victor having drawn attention. But he kept his focus forward, one hand hovering near Sophia's back without quite touching, a gesture of support and protection that didn't presume ownership. The cool night air hit them as they stepped outside, a welcome relief from the restaurant's warmth. The city street was still alive with Friday night energy, couples walking hand in hand, groups of friends laughing as they headed to bars, the distant sound of music from a club down the block. Sophia stopped on the sidewalk, breathing deeply, letting the night air clear her head. Evan stood beside her quietly, giving her space and time. "I parked in the garage 2 blocks down," she finally said. "You really don't have to—" "I want to," Evan interrupted gently. "Please." They began walking together, their pace slow and unhurried. The streets were well lit, the sidewalks busy enough to feel safe but not crowded enough to be claustrophobic. After a moment of silence, Sophia spoke. "Victor was right about one thing. You don't know who I am, what I do, what my world is really like." "Do you want to tell me?" Sophia considered this. "I'm not sure it matters. Tonight was about being nobody, remember? The minute I explain my life, I become somebody again, somebody with baggage and complications, and a vindictive ex who crashed our dinner." "Fair enough," Evan accepted easily. "Then we'll just keep walking." They passed a small flower stand on the corner, still open despite the late hour. An elderly woman sat behind buckets of roses, carnations, and mixed bouquets, reading a paperback novel by the light of a small lamp. Evan paused, an idea forming. "Wait here just a second." Before Sophia could respond, he'd approached the flower stand. She watched as he spoke quietly with the elderly woman, gestured to various buckets, and finally selected a simple bouquet of white roses and lavender. The transaction took less than a minute, Evan pulling bills from his wallet, the woman wrapping the flowers in brown paper with practiced efficiency, a brief exchange, and a smile. He returned to Sophia holding the modest bouquet, suddenly looking slightly self-conscious. "I just thought tonight deserved a better ending than Victor. Something to remember the good parts by." Sophia stared at the flowers, then at Evan, something shifting in her expression that was difficult to name. She accepted the bouquet carefully, as if it were made of something precious and fragile. "Nobody's bought me flowers in years," she said quietly. "The last time was from Victor, actually. He sent 24 roses to my office after we had a fight. They cost a fortune and came with a card full of empty apologies. I hated them." She looked down at Evan's simple bouquet. "These are beautiful." "They're just flowers," Evan said, but he was smiling. "No," Sophia corrected, meeting his eyes. "They're exactly what I needed." They continued their walk to the parking garage, Sophia cradling the flowers against her chest. The conversation had shifted, become quieter, more contemplative. They were both aware that this strange, unexpected evening was drawing to a close, and neither quite knew what that meant. The parking garage was well lit but mostly empty at this hour, their footsteps echoing on the concrete. Sophia led them to the 3rd level, where a sleek black Mercedes waited in a corner spot. She unlocked the car but didn't immediately get in, turning instead to face Evan fully. The fluorescent lights of the garage washed out the colors but somehow made the moment feel more intimate, more real. "Thank you," she said, and the weight of everything was in those two words. For the table, for the conversation, for standing up to Victor, for the flowers, for treating me like a person instead of a puzzle to solve or a resource to exploit. "You are a person," Evan said simply. "That's all you needed to be tonight." Sophia reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. She held it for a moment, clearly debating, then extended it to Evan. "I promised myself I wouldn't do this," she admitted. "That I'd just let tonight be what it was, a perfect anonymous moment, but I think I'd regret it if I didn't at least give you a way to, I don't know, contact me if you ever wanted to." Evan took the card, glancing down at it in the garage's harsh lighting. And then he froze. The card was heavy, expensive stock, embossed lettering, and it read, "Sophia Langford, Chief Executive Officer, Langford Real Estate Holdings." Below that, a phone number, an email address, and a sleek company logo he recognized from buildings throughout the city. Evan looked up at Sophia, his expression neutral but his mind racing. Langford Real Estate Holdings was one of the largest property development companies on the East Coast. He'd worked on 3 buildings in the past 2 years that had been Langford projects. The woman he'd been having dinner with, the woman who'd wanted to be nobody for a few hours, was worth billions. "You okay?" Sophia asked quietly, watching his face for signs of the reaction she'd seen 1,000 times. The shift from seeing her as a person to seeing her as an opportunity. Evan slipped the card into his pocket and met her eyes steadily. "I'm fine. Just surprised." "Does it change anything?" The question was vulnerable in a way nothing else she'd said all evening had been. Evan thought about it honestly. "It explains Victor a bit more. Explains why you needed to escape. Explains why being nobody felt important." He paused. "But no, it doesn't change anything that mattered about tonight." Sophia's shoulders relaxed, a tension she'd been holding releasing. "You really mean that?" "I really do. You wanted a quiet dinner where nobody knew your name or wanted something from you. That's what we had. The rest is just context. Context that includes a very complicated life, a vindictive ex with power in my industry, and very little free time for random dinners with strangers," Sophia warned. "I'm a single dad who works 60-hour weeks coordinating construction projects, and whose idea of an exciting Friday night is getting to eat dinner without cutting someone else's food first," Evan countered. "We all have complicated lives, Sophia. Different flavors of complicated, but complicated nonetheless." She smiled, genuine and warm despite everything. "You're a very unusual man, Evan Brooks." "I'm really not," he disagreed. "I think most people would have done what I did tonight. You've just been surrounded by the wrong people for too long." Sophia opened her car door but didn't get in, clearly reluctant to end the conversation. "If I called you sometime, if I wanted to do this again, have a quiet dinner with someone who treats me like a person, would you be interested?" Evan considered the question carefully. He thought about his life, about Emma, about his job, about his modest apartment, and his carefully constructed routine. He thought about Sophia's world, about board meetings and business empires and men like Victor who wielded power like weapons. They were from completely different universes, and yet tonight had worked. For reasons he couldn't fully articulate, it had simply worked. "Yeah," he said finally. "I'd be interested, but only if you promise that when it gets too complicated, when your world starts creeping in and making things messy, you'll be honest about it." "I can handle complicated, Sophia. What I can't handle is dishonesty." "I promise," she said immediately. "Complete honesty, even when it's uncomfortable." "Then yes. Call me sometime." Sophia pulled out her phone. "What's your number?" They exchanged information, the modern ritual of connection playing out in a parking garage under fluorescent lights. When it was done, they stood there for another moment, neither quite wanting to be the first to leave. "I should go," Sophia finally said. "It's late and you probably want to get home." "Drive safe," Evan replied. Sophia stepped closer and, before Evan could react, rose on her toes and pressed a light kiss to his cheek. It was brief, barely more than a whisper of contact, but it carried weight. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Then she was in her car, the engine purring to life with expensive smoothness. Evan stepped back, lifting his hand in a small wave as she pulled out of the parking spot and headed for the exit. He watched her taillights disappear down the ramp, and then he was alone in the concrete quiet of the parking garage, processing everything that had just happened. His phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Emma's already asleep. Crashed around 9 after approximately 47 cookies and a sugar-fueled dance party. Hope you're having a good night. Evan smiled and texted back. Having an interesting night. Picking her up in the morning, 10 a.m. And I want details about what made it interesting. Later. Thanks for tonight, Rach. He walked back to his own car, a 7-year-old Honda Civic with a car seat in the back and graham cracker crumbs permanently embedded in the upholstery. As he drove home through the city streets, Evan replayed the evening in his mind. He'd come to the restaurant wanting peace and quiet, a few hours to be himself without responsibility or obligation. Instead, he'd ended up having dinner with a billionaire CEO, confronting her manipulative ex-boyfriend and exchanging numbers with a woman so far outside his usual world that it would have been laughable if it hadn't felt so surprisingly natural. His apartment was dark and quiet when he arrived home. He poured himself a glass of water and stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the city lights and thinking about Sophia Langford, sitting in her expensive, empty apartment doing much the same thing. Different worlds, different problems, but the same fundamental loneliness, the same need to be seen as human instead of as a role or a resource. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Thank you for tonight, for all of it. The flowers are in water, and I'm sitting here wondering how a random Friday dinner turned into the most genuine evening I've had in years. Sophia. Evan smiled and typed back. Thank you for taking the risk of sitting with a stranger. Hope the rest of your weekend is peaceful. Evan, unlikely, but I'll remember tonight when it gets crazy. Good night, Evan. Good night, Sophia. Evan set his phone down and finished his water. Tomorrow he'd pick up Emma, who would talk nonstop about the sleepover and probably insist on reenacting every moment of it. Monday he'd be back at work, juggling contractors and timelines and the endless small crises that made up his professional life. But tonight had been different. Tonight had reminded him that sometimes the most important moments were the ones you didn't plan. The stranger who needed a seat, the quiet conversation that revealed unexpected depth, the choice to stand up when someone crossed a line. As he got ready for bed, Evan pulled Sophia's business card from his pocket and set it on his nightstand. He looked at it for a long moment, at the expensive embossing and the title that represented billions of dollars and enormous responsibility. Then he turned off the light and settled into bed, smiling slightly in the darkness. Different worlds, yes. But maybe, just maybe, worlds that could intersect in interesting ways. The night outside his window continued its familiar symphony, distant sirens, car horns, the hum of a city that never fully slept. And somewhere in that same city, in an expensive apartment with a view of the skyline, Sophia Langford sat holding a bouquet of white roses and lavender, realizing that the most valuable thing she'd gained tonight hadn't been a business contact or a strategic alliance. It had been the reminder that she was allowed to be human, that sometimes being nobody was the most important thing you could be. And that real connection didn't require credentials or careful calculation, just honesty, kindness, and the willingness to share a table with a stranger who might turn out to be exactly what you needed. The weekend passed in its own peculiar rhythm for both of them. Evan picked up Emma Saturday morning from Rachel's house, just as promised, and spent the day listening to an enthusiastic recap of every single moment of the sleepover, the pillow fort construction, the midnight snack raid, the scary story that wasn't actually scary at all, and the breakfast pancakes that Rachel had apparently made into perfect elephant shapes, which Emma demonstrated with her hands at least 15 times. "Daddy, why are you smiling so much?" Emma asked that afternoon as they sat in the park, her small hands working to build what she claimed was a super castle in the sandbox. "Am I smiling?" Evan asked, though he knew he was. "Yes, like this." Emma demonstrated an exaggerated grin that made her eyes squint shut. "Like you have a happy secret." Evan laughed and ruffled her hair. "Maybe I do. Maybe I had a nice time Friday night too." "Did you go to a sleepover?" "Not exactly. I just had dinner with someone interesting." Emma's eyes went wide with the particular fascination children have for their parents' lives outside of parenting. "A girl someone? A friend someone?" Evan corrected gently, though his cheeks warmed. Daddy has a girlfriend, Emma announced to the entire playground, her voice carrying with the volume only 5-year-olds can achieve. Emma, that's not... But she'd already returned to her castle construction, having lost interest in the topic as quickly as she'd latched onto it. Evan pulled out his phone and found himself looking at Sophia's business card photo he'd taken. He'd done some research Saturday morning after dropping Emma at her mother's for the weekend visit. Langford Real Estate Holdings had a market value in the billions. Sophia had built it from the ground up after inheriting a small property management company from her father, transforming it into one of the most innovative development firms in the country. There were articles about her business acumen, her negotiation skills, her ability to see potential in properties others overlooked. But there were also other articles. Society page mentions, photographs from charity galas, and several pieces about her relationship with Victor Hale, described as real estate royalty, and a power couple before their breakup 18 months ago. The breakup had been public, messy, in the way that wealthy people's relationships became messy. Veiled statements to the press, rumors of professional sabotage, speculation about who had really ended things. One article from a business journal mentioned that Victor had launched his own development firm shortly after the split, poaching several key employees from Langford Holdings and competing directly for the same high-value projects. The professional community had watched their personal dissolution become a business war. Evan closed the browser, feeling slightly guilty for digging into Sophia's life. She'd wanted to be nobody for an evening, and here he was, treating her like a Wikipedia entry to be studied and analyzed. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, though he knew immediately who it was. Hope you're having a good weekend. Board meeting tomorrow. Not looking forward to it, but that's the job. How's Emma? Evan smiled and typed back. She's great. Currently building what she calls a super castle, but looks more like a sand pile with a stick in it. Good luck tomorrow. Remember, you're more than what people need from you. The response came quickly. Needed to hear that. Thank you. They'd exchanged a few messages over the weekend, nothing deep or substantial, just small check-ins that felt natural despite the strangeness of their situation. Sophia had sent a photo of the flowers in a vase on her balcony. Evan had responded with a picture Emma had drawn of what she claimed was Daddy's friend who gave him happy secrets. She's very talented, Sophia had written. Though I think she made me look like I have purple hair and possibly wings? That means she likes you. Her art teacher told me she only adds wings to people she thinks are special. Then I'm honored to have wings. Now, watching Emma play while keeping half an eye on his phone, Evan wondered what Monday's board meeting would bring for Sophia. He thought about Victor's parting words at the restaurant, the threat veiled as casual observation. Men like that didn't make empty threats. Sunday evening, after putting Emma to bed with 3 stories and a lengthy negotiation about whether stuffed animals needed blankets too, Evan's phone rang. Sophia's name appeared on the screen. He answered on the second ring. Hey. Hi. Sophia's voice sounded tired. I hope it's not too late to call. It's fine. Emma's asleep. I'm just doing the dishes. The glamorous single-parent life, Sophia said with a slight laugh. Every night, Evan confirmed, putting her on speaker as he continued washing. How are you doing? Big day tomorrow. Terrifying day tomorrow, Sophia corrected. Victor's been working the board members all weekend. I've gotten 3 calls from people I thought were allies, all suddenly concerned about my leadership direction and strategic vision. It's code for Victor convinced us to doubt you. What's he trying to do? Sophia was quiet for a moment, and Evan could hear the sound of liquid pouring. Wine, probably. He wants control of a project we've been developing for 3 years. It's a massive mixed-use development in the waterfront district, potentially the biggest thing Langford Holdings has ever done. But it's also risky, expensive, and complicated. Victor's been telling the board I'm in over my head, that I'm letting personal attachment to the project cloud my judgment. Are you? I don't know, Sophia admitted, and the honesty in her voice was raw. Maybe. I believe in this project, Evan. It could transform an entire neighborhood, create affordable housing alongside commercial development, preserve historical buildings while bringing in new economic growth. But it requires vision and patience. 2 things Victor has never had. But things the board is worried about. Exactly. They want safe bets and quarterly returns. Victor's offering them a simplified version of the project that would make faster money but gut everything that makes it special. And tomorrow he's going to push for a vote on leadership of the project. If he wins, he effectively controls the most important development in the company's history. Evan dried his hands and picked up the phone, taking her off speaker. What do you need? I don't know, Sophia said quietly. I called because I don't even know why I called. You can't help with this. Nobody can. I just needed to talk to someone who doesn't have a financial stake in my decisions. Then talk. I'm listening. And she did. For the next 40 minutes, Sophia talked about the project, the vision she had for it, the compromises she'd already made, the people she'd be letting down if Victor took control. She talked about the weight of running a company her father had built, of trying to honor his legacy while also making it her own. She talked about the loneliness of leadership, of making decisions that affected hundreds of employees and thousands of future residents, all while knowing that one wrong move could destroy everything. Evan listened without interrupting, without offering platitudes or easy solutions. He understood that she didn't need advice, she needed a witness. Someone who could hold space for her anxiety without trying to fix it. Sorry, Sophia finally said. I've been talking for ages. You probably have things to do. Nothing more important than this, Evan replied honestly. Feel better? Surprisingly, yes. How do you do that? Do what? Make me feel like my problems matter without making me feel weak for having them. Your problems do matter, and having them doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Evan moved to his small living room and settled onto the couch. Question: regardless of what happens tomorrow, do you believe in this project? Completely. Then fight for it. Not because you'll definitely win, but because it's worth fighting for. And if you lose, at least you'll lose knowing you tried for something that mattered. That's very noble, Sophia said, but there was warmth in her voice. Also potentially terrible business advice. I'm a construction coordinator, not a business consultant. I leave strategy to people like you. I just know that regret comes from not trying, not from trying and failing. Your daughter is very lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She reminds me every day what's worth fighting for. Evan paused. You'll do great tomorrow, Sophia. Victor might be loud and intimidating, but you're the one with vision. Trust that. They talked for a few more minutes before Sophia finally said goodnight, her voice stronger than it had been at the start of the call. After hanging up, Evan sat in the quiet of his apartment, thinking about board meetings and business empires and the strange turn his life had taken in the past 3 days. Monday morning arrived with the particular chaos that only kindergartners can create. Emma couldn't find her favorite shoes, then couldn't decide between the blue shirt and the purple shirt, then announced that she needed to bring her stuffed elephant to school for emotional support reasons. By the time Evan dropped her off and made it to his office, he was already running on his second coffee, and it wasn't even 9 a.m. His phone buzzed around 11 with a message from Sophia. Going into the meeting. Wish me luck. You've got this, he typed back. Remember who you are. The response was just a simple heart emoji, but it made him smile. Work absorbed his attention for the next few hours. A supplier issue that required 3 phone calls to resolve, a client walkthrough that revealed problems with the electrical work, and a scheduling conflict that needed diplomatic handling. By the time Evan looked at his phone again, it was almost 3 p.m. No messages from Sophia. He told himself that was normal. Board meetings ran long. She was probably still in there fighting her battles, doing what she did best. But a small knot of worry had formed in his stomach. At 4:30, his phone finally rang. Sophia's name appeared. Hey, he answered. How'd it go? The silence on the other end told him everything before she spoke. When Sophia's voice came through, it was controlled but carrying the weight of defeat. Can I see you tonight? I know it's short notice, and you probably have Emma, but I need to talk to someone real. Emma's at her mom's until Wednesday. I can meet you anywhere. There's a small wine bar on Morrison Street. Quiet. Nobody I know goes there. Could you meet me there at 7? I'll be there. Thank you, Evan. Really? The wine bar was exactly as Sophia had described. Small, intimate, the kind of place that valued conversation over volume. Exposed brick walls, dim lighting from Edison bulbs, shelves of wine bottles creating a warm amber glow. A handful of small tables were scattered throughout, most empty on a Monday evening. Evan arrived first and chose a corner table. He'd gone home to change out of his work clothes into jeans and a clean button-down, feeling underdressed but not knowing what else to do. This wasn't a date, he reminded himself. This was a friend who needed support, though the definition of friend felt inadequate for whatever was developing between them. Sophia arrived 10 minutes later, and Evan's heart clenched at the sight of her. She was still in her business attire, a sharp navy suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent. But her hair was slightly disheveled, her makeup smudged around her eyes in a way that suggested she'd been crying, and then tried to cover it up. She carried herself with the same poise as always, but it was a fragile thing now, held together by sheer force of will. She spotted him and managed a small smile as she approached. Evan stood, and without thinking, pulled out her chair. Sophia sank into it like someone who'd been standing for days. "Bad?" Evan asked gently as he resumed his seat. "Worse than bad." Sophia signaled the waiter and ordered a Cabernet without looking at the menu. Evan ordered the same. Once the waiter departed, Sophia closed her eyes and took a long breath. "Victor won," she finally said, opening her eyes to meet Evan's. "Not completely, but enough. The board voted to create a special committee to oversee the waterfront project, with Victor as the chair. Officially, I'm still CEO, and the project is still under Langford Holdings, but functionally, he now controls every major decision." "I'm so sorry." "The worst part is how he did it." Sophia's hands clenched on the table. "He came prepared with alternative designs, financial projections, risk assessments, all the things I'd spent 3 years developing, but stripped down and simplified. He made it sound reasonable, practical. Made me sound idealistic and reckless by comparison." The wine arrived, and Sophia took a long sip before continuing. He had 3 board members completely in his pocket. 2 more he'd swayed over the weekend with concerns about fiscal responsibility. The vote was 7-5. I lost my own board's confidence in my flagship project. "What did you say? During the meeting?" "I fought, presented every argument I had, defended every decision, explained the long-term vision versus short-term profit. But Victor," Sophia's voice hardened, "he knows exactly how to undermine me. He'd mentioned small details from projects we worked on together, implying he'd been the real strategic mind. He'd referenced conversations we'd had privately, making it sound like I'd always needed his guidance. He painted a picture of someone who'd been successful because of him and who was now failing without him. That's manipulative garbage." "Yes, and it worked." Sophia took another drink. "After the vote, he actually had the audacity to approach me and say this was for the best, that we'd be working together again, just like old times, like he hadn't just systematically dismantled 3 years of my work." Evan felt anger rising in his chest, the same protective instinct that had made him stand up in the restaurant Friday night. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Sophia admitted, and the vulnerability in those 3 words was devastating. "I could fight it, challenge the board's authority, make this into a public battle, but that would destabilize the entire company, hurt our other projects, damage relationships with investors. The responsible thing is to accept the committee structure and try to minimize Victor's damage from within." But the thought of working with him, of watching him take credit for vision that isn't his, of compromising everything I believe this project should be. Sophia's voice cracked slightly. "I built this company into something that matters. We don't just build buildings, we build communities. We think about affordability, sustainability, preservation. Victor only thinks about profit margins and press coverage." Evan reached across the table and took her hand. The gesture was simple, but Sophia's fingers immediately curled around his, holding on like an anchor. "You haven't lost," Evan said firmly. "You've had a setback. Those are different things. Feels like losing. I know it does, but you're still CEO. You still have 5 board members who voted with you. You still have the vision and the expertise and the determination. Victor might have won this battle, but the war isn't over." Sophia looked at him, really looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. "How do you do that? How do you make me believe things might be okay when everything feels impossible?" "Because I've been there. Different circumstances, but the same feeling. When Emma's mom left, when I realized I was going to be raising a daughter alone while trying to build a career and keep us afloat financially, there were days I was sure I couldn't do it. Days I was certain I was failing at everything. What changed? I stopped measuring success by whether everything was perfect and started measuring it by whether I was still trying. Some days, getting Emma to school with matching shoes and a lunch that wasn't just crackers felt like a victory. Other days, just surviving until bedtime was enough. Evan squeezed her hand. You're still trying, Sophia. You're still fighting for what matters. That counts for something. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, hands still linked across the table. The wine bar's gentle ambiance wrapped around them, soft jazz playing from hidden speakers, the murmur of quiet conversations from other tables, the clink of glasses and gentle laughter. I keep thinking about Friday night, Sophia said quietly, about how simple everything felt, how it was just two people having dinner, talking about music and books and the small things that make up a life. No board meetings, no strategic planning, no Victor. We could do that again, Evan offered. Right now. We could just talk about small things, give you a break from the heaviness. Sophia managed a real smile. I'd like that. So they did. Evan told her about Emma's elaborate stuffed animal concert from the weekend, complete with a set list Emma had written herself that included such hits as Elephant Song and The Ballad of Mr. Bear. Sophia laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time all evening. She told him about Rosa, the cleaning woman, who'd stopped by her office that morning with homemade empanadas, somehow knowing Sophia would need comfort food. They talked about books they'd loved as children, movies they were embarrassed to admit they enjoyed, and the particular magic of fall weather in the city. The waiter brought a cheese plate without being asked, having clearly assessed that these were customers who needed to linger. They picked at it absently, the food less important than the conversation. Can I ask you something? Sophia said after their second glass of wine. And you can say no, or tell me it's too personal. Ask Emma's mother. You said it didn't work out. Do you still have feelings for her? Evan considered the question carefully. I love who she is to Emma. She's her mother, and she tries her best with that role. But romantic feelings? No. Those ended a long time ago, probably before Emma was even born, if I'm honest. What happened? We were young, Evan said simply. Met in college, dated for a couple years, got pregnant accidentally. We tried to make it work because we thought that's what you did. Got married, moved in together, played house. But we never actually loved each other. We loved the idea of the family we were supposed to be. That must have been hard. It was harder staying than leaving. We were making each other miserable trying to force something that wasn't real. Emma was one, and she was picking up on the tension, the constant arguments. Her mom finally said what we'd both been thinking, that this wasn't working, that we were better as co-parents than spouses. No bitterness? Some, initially. Mostly about logistics, custody, money, the practical dissolution of a shared life. But now, no. She's a good mom when she has Emma. We coordinate well. We're better apart than we ever were together. Evan paused. What about you and Victor? When did you know it was over? Sophia's expression darkened. I think I knew before it even began, if that makes sense. But I was young and ambitious, and Victor was charming and successful. He seemed like the perfect partner, someone who understood my world, who could match my drive, who wouldn't be intimidated by my success. But everything was transactional. Every dinner was a networking opportunity. Every conversation was strategic planning. Every moment together had to serve a purpose, building his brand, expanding my connections, positioning us as power players. There was no softness, no genuine affection, just two people using each other to climb higher. When did you finally leave? I didn't, Sophia admitted. He left me. Found someone younger, someone he saw as more useful for his next career phase. Told me I'd become too focused on legacy projects and not enough on innovation, which was code for you're not helping my image anymore. That's brutal. What made it worse was that I felt relieved. Not hurt that he'd left, but relieved I didn't have to keep pretending. That's when I realized how empty the whole relationship had been. We'd been together for 3 years, and I'd never once called him just to talk. Never sent him a random text about something small. Never felt comfortable being vulnerable around him. She looked at Evan with an intensity that made his breath catch. Then I meet you, a complete stranger in a restaurant, and within 2 hours I'm more honest than I was in 3 years with Victor. What does that say about me? It says you were in a relationship that didn't let you be yourself, Evan replied. And now you're not. That's growth, Sophia, not failure. I'm 30 years old, running a $1 billion company, and I don't have a single relationship in my life that isn't somehow tied to business or obligation, except Rosa, and now, apparently, you. What about family? Sophia's smile was sad. My father died 5 years ago. Heart attack, completely unexpected. My mother remarried and moved to France. We talk maybe once a month, very cordially, very distantly. I have a brother who works in tech in California. We exchange Christmas cards. She laughed without humor. I have 1,000 business contacts and 0 real friends. That's not quite true anymore, Evan said gently. Sophia met his eyes. Isn't it strange? We barely know each other. You've seen me exactly twice, and one of those times involved my ex-boyfriend publicly humiliating me. Yet I trust you more than people I've known for years. Maybe that's because we started without pretense. You needed a seat. I offered one. No calculation, no agenda. Just 2 tired people sharing a meal. And now? Now we're 2 tired people sharing wine and talking about what matters. Still no agenda. Evan smiled. Though I'd like to think we're friends now. Is that okay? It's more than okay. Sophia finished her wine. Though I should warn you, being friends with me comes with complications. Victor proved that today. How so? The board meeting. One of the things he mentioned, very casually, was that I'd been seen dining with an unknown companion Friday night. Implied it was affecting my judgment, making me distracted. A few board members looked uncomfortable, like my personal life was now a professional liability. Evan felt a flash of anger. He's tracking you? Not directly, but he has people who report back to him. The restaurant was public, visible. Someone saw us together and told Victor, and he weaponized it. Sophia's expression was pained. I'm so sorry, Evan. This is exactly what I was afraid of. My world is messy and toxic, and now you're getting dragged into it. I'm not dragged into anything I didn't choose, Evan corrected firmly. You asked to share a table. I said yes. We had dinner, we talked, we became friends. That's it. If Victor wants to make that into something sinister, that's his problem, not ours. But it affects you. If he decides you're a threat or a weakness, he'll find ways to hurt you through me. Let him try. Evan's voice was calm but hard. I'm not afraid of Victor Hale. I'm not in his world. I don't play his games, and I don't care about his opinion. You want to be friends? We're friends. You need someone to talk to at midnight because a board meeting went badly? Call me. You want to have dinner and pretend your life is normal for a few hours? I'm there. Victor doesn't get a vote. Sophia stared at him, something like wonder in her expression. You really mean that? I really do. My life isn't complicated the way yours is, Sophia, but it's still complicated. Single parent, demanding job, ex-wife dynamics, constant financial juggling. I don't need simple. I need real. And this, whatever this friendship is, feels real. It does, Sophia agreed softly. More real than anything else in my life right now. They ordered a 3rd glass of wine, though neither really needed it. The conversation drifted again, this time more philosophical. They talked about what success really meant, whether achievement and happiness were compatible, how to stay true to yourself in environments that demanded compromise. I envy you sometimes, Sophia admitted. You have Emma, this pure relationship that isn't about anything except love. Everything I have is conditional. People support me if I'm successful, respect me if I'm powerful, associate with me if it benefits them. Emma's relationship isn't as pure as you think, Evan countered gently. She loves me fiercely, but she's also learning manipulation. She knows exactly which arguments work to extend bedtime, which facial expressions will get her extra cookies, how to play me and her mother against each other. Love and strategy aren't mutually exclusive. But the foundation is love. With Victor, the foundation was always strategy. Then you choose differently next time. You find someone whose foundation matches yours. Sophia looked down at her wine glass, swirling the remaining liquid. What if I don't know how? What if I've spent so long in transactional relationships that I've forgotten what genuine connection looks like? You haven't forgotten. You're doing it right now. This is different. This is friendship. This is safe. Is it? Evan asked quietly, and something in his tone made Sophia look up sharply. Their eyes met, and the air between them shifted. became charged with something they'd both been carefully avoiding acknowledging. This wasn't just friendship. Not anymore. Maybe not from the beginning. There was attraction here, complicated and inconvenient and undeniable. Evan, Sophia started, but wasn't sure how to finish. I know, he said simply. I feel it too. But I also know that your life is incredibly complicated right now, and adding romantic entanglement would make it exponentially worse. Very rational. I have a daughter who depends on me making rational choices. But even as he said it, Evan reached across the table and took her hand again. That doesn't mean I don't want to, just means I'm choosing not to complicate your life more than it already is. Sophia's fingers intertwined with his. What if I want the complication? Then we wait. We take this slow. We figure out the friendship first, and if there's still something there when your world is less chaotic, we explore it then. Evan smiled. I'm not going anywhere, Sophia. You don't have to rush this. You're a very unusual man, Evan Brooks. You keep saying that. I'm really not. Yes, you are. Most men, if they felt what you just admitted to feeling, would push for more, would use my vulnerability as an opportunity. Then you've been around the wrong men. Evan squeezed her hand once more before releasing it. You deserve someone who can wait, who can be patient while you fight your battles, who sees you as more than an opportunity or a conquest. Sophia blinked rapidly, fighting tears. Why are you being so kind to me? Because you deserve kindness, and because friendship, real friendship, means showing up for people without expecting anything in return. They stayed at the wine bar until nearly 10, long after they'd finished their wine and paid the bill. The waiter eventually, very politely, mentioned they were closing. Evan and Sophia stepped out into the cool October night. The city sounds a gentle backdrop to their continued conversation. Can I drive you home? Sophia asked as they stood on the sidewalk, neither quite ready to part ways. I'm only about 6 blocks from here. I was planning to walk. Then can I walk with you? They walked slowly through the residential neighborhood, passing brownstones with lit windows that revealed glimpses of other people's lives, families having dinner, couples watching television, solitary figures reading by lamplight. The intimacy of those glimpses felt appropriate somehow, like they were witnesses to the small moments that actually made up a life. What happens now? Sophia asked as they walked. With the board situation, I mean. You go back tomorrow, and you start fighting smart instead of hard. You work with the board members who supported you, build stronger alliances, document every decision Victor makes. You play the long game. I hate the long game. Most people do. But you're good at it, whether you like it or not. You didn't build Langford Holdings by being impulsive. You built it by being strategic and patient and smarter than everyone else. Victor's smart too. But he's arrogant. That's his weakness. He thinks he's already won, which means he'll get sloppy. You stay focused, stay disciplined, and wait for him to overreach. He will. Men like him always do. They reached Evan's building, a modest walk-up in a neighborhood that had seen better days but was slowly gentrifying. Sophia looked at it with interest, this glimpse into Evan's real life. This is me, Evan said, stopping at the front steps. Sophia turned to face him fully. Thank you, for tonight, for listening, for making me feel less alone in all of this. Any time, literally, 3 a.m., whenever. You need to talk, you call. I might take you up on that. I hope you do. They stood there in the glow of the streetlight, the moment stretching between them, with all its possibilities and restraints. Sophia took a half step closer, and Evan's breath caught. I want to kiss you, she said quietly. But I'm not going to, because you're right. We should wait. We should do this properly when my life isn't falling apart, and you're not my emotional support during a crisis. That's very mature of you, Evan managed, his voice slightly rough. I'm trying to be the person you seem to think I am, someone who makes good choices instead of impulsive ones. For what it's worth, I don't think kissing me would be a bad choice, just possibly a complicated one. Sophia laughed, some of the tension breaking. See? This is why I like you. You're honest about the complications instead of pretending they don't exist. She reached up and gently touched his cheek, a gesture of affection and promise and restraint all at once. Then she stepped back, creating safe distance between them. Good night, Evan. Good night, Sophia. Text me when you get home safe." "I will." He watched her walk back the way they'd come, her figure elegant even in her exhaustion, until she turned the corner and disappeared from sight. Then Evan climbed the stairs to his apartment, his mind racing with everything that had happened, everything that had almost happened, everything that might happen still. His phone buzzed 20 minutes later. "Home safe. Thank you again for everything, for being you. Sleep well. Tomorrow's a new day to fight the good fight. With you on my side, I might actually believe that." Evan smiled at his phone, then set it aside and got ready for bed. As he lay in the darkness, he thought about Sophia facing her board tomorrow, about Victor's machinations, about the complicated dance they were all engaged in. But mostly, he thought about the way Sophia had looked at him in the streetlight, the way she'd touched his cheek, the way she'd been strong enough to choose waiting over immediate gratification. Different worlds, different problems, but the same fundamental desire for genuine connection in a life that often felt performative and transactional. And maybe, just maybe, they could navigate those complications together, carefully, patiently, honestly. The city hummed outside his window, millions of lives intersecting in countless ways. Somewhere in that vast network, Sophia was probably lying awake too, thinking similar thoughts, feeling the same strange mix of hope and uncertainty. His phone buzzed again. "Are you awake?" "Yeah, can't sleep. Too much in my head. Can I call you?" "Of course." Her call came through seconds later. They talked for another hour about nothing and everything until Sophia's voice finally grew drowsy and soft. "I should let you sleep," she murmured. "Probably, but I'm glad you called." "Me too." "Evan?" "Yeah?" "I'm really glad you offered me that seat Friday night. I'm glad you took a chance on a stressed stranger who needed peace. I'm glad you took the chance on me too." After they hung up, Evan finally drifted toward sleep, a small smile on his face despite the complications, despite the uncertainty, despite Victor Hale and board meetings and billion-dollar empires. Because sometimes the most important thing wasn't whether the path ahead was clear, it was whether you'd found someone worth walking it with. The next 2 weeks fell into an unexpected rhythm. Sophia would text Evan in the mornings, sometimes just a simple good morning, sometimes a longer message about what she was facing that day. Evan would respond between coordinating subcontractors and managing job sites, their conversations threading through the ordinary chaos of their separate lives. They met for coffee twice during those weeks, quick stolen moments during Sophia's lunch breaks where they'd sit in small cafes and talk about everything except business empires and custody schedules. They discussed the books neither of them had time to read, the movies they wanted to see, the small observations about city life that only mattered because they were sharing them. Evan learned that Sophia had a weakness for terrible reality television, which she watched late at night when she couldn't sleep. Sophia discovered that Evan could do a perfect impression of Emma's kindergarten teacher, complete with the exasperated sighs when children asked why they couldn't have recess all day. But underneath the easy friendship, tension was building. Victor had wasted no time implementing changes to the waterfront project. Sophia would send Evan frustrated texts at odd hours about design modifications that stripped away the affordable housing components, about historical preservation elements being deemed too expensive, about community input sessions being quietly canceled. "He's turning it into exactly what I was afraid of," she'd written at 2 a.m. on a Thursday. "A luxury development that prices out the existing neighborhood. Everything I fought against." Document everything," Evan had replied, though he knew she already was. "Build your case. Wait for the right moment." The right moment came sooner than either of them expected, though not in the way they'd anticipated. It was a Friday evening, 2 weeks and 3 days after that first dinner at Marcello's. Evan had picked up Emma from school and was looking forward to a quiet weekend, movie night with his daughter, maybe a trip to the playground on Saturday, the kind of simple pleasures that made single parenthood worthwhile despite its challenges. His phone rang at 6:30, just as he was negotiating with Emma about whether dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets counted as a real dinner. Sophia's name appeared on the screen. "Hey, can I call you back in?" Evan started, but Sophia's voice cut him off. "Evan." Just his name, but there was something in her tone that made his stomach drop. Fear, anger, and something else he couldn't quite identify. "What's wrong?" He gestured for Emma to lower the volume on the television, and she complied with the particular seriousness children show when they sense adult worry. "I need your help." Sophia's words came fast, slightly breathless. I know this is asking a lot, and you have Emma, and I have no right to involve you in this, but I don't know who else to call and... Sophia, breathe. Tell me what happened. A pause, and then, Victor showed up at my apartment. He has a key from when we were together. I never changed the locks, which was stupid, and he just let himself in while I was in the shower. When I came out, he was sitting in my living room like he owned the place. Evan felt his jaw tighten. Are you safe? Is he still there? I told him to leave. He refused, said we needed to talk about our working relationship and that I was being unnecessarily difficult about the project modifications. He's been drinking. I can smell it. And he's got that look he gets when he thinks he's being charming, but he's actually being controlling. Call the police. I can't. Sophia's voice cracked slightly. If I call the police on Victor Hale, it becomes a public spectacle. The board will see it as personal drama affecting professional judgment. He knows that, which is why he's using it. He's backing me into a corner where my only options are to tolerate his presence or create a scene that damages my credibility. Evan was already moving, grabbing his jacket with one hand while keeping the phone pressed to his ear. Where exactly are you? The residence is on Park Avenue, penthouse level. But Evan, you don't have to... Text me the exact address. I'm coming. You have Emma. Evan looked at his daughter, who was watching him with wide, concerned eyes. He made a split-second decision that he hoped he wouldn't regret. Emma, sweetheart, we need to go visit Aunt Rachel right now. Can you grab your backpack really quick? Emma, sensing the urgency, nodded and scrambled to collect her things. Into the phone, Evan said, I'm 20 minutes away, maybe 25. Can you stay safe until then? I can lock myself in my bedroom. He won't force the door. He's not violent, just invasive and manipulative. Lock the door. Stay on the phone with me until I get there. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Now lock the door. He heard movement, footsteps, then the solid click of a lock engaging. Sophia's breathing was still uneven, adrenaline clearly coursing through her system. Evan shepherded Emma out to the car, buckling her into her car seat with practiced efficiency. As he started the engine, Emma asked in a small voice, Daddy, is your friend okay? She's going to be fine, baby. She just needs help with something, and we're going to make sure she's safe. Is she scared? A little bit, yeah. Emma thought about this as Evan pulled into traffic, navigating toward Rachel's apartment with one hand while keeping his phone on speaker. You should tell her it's okay to be scared. That's what you tell me when I have bad dreams. Despite everything, Evan smiled. That's very smart, Em, you're right. Into the phone, he said, Did you hear that? Emma says it's okay to be scared. Sophia's laugh was shaky, but genuine. Emma sounds very wise. Thank you, Emma. You're welcome, Emma called out cheerfully, apparently satisfied with her contribution to the crisis management. They reached Rachel's apartment in record time. His sister answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her expression shifting from surprise to concern as she took in Evan's face. Emergency babysitting? She asked, already reaching for Emma's backpack. Please. I'll explain later, but I need to help a friend right now, and I can't have Em with me. Rachel studied him for a moment, then nodded. Go. We'll have a girls' night. Ice cream and movies, right, Emma? Ice cream. Emma's concerns about her father's friend were immediately supplanted by the promise of sugar. She hugged Evan's legs briefly. Go help your friend, Daddy. Tell her brave people can be scared too. I will, baby. Love you. Love you. Evan was back in the car and accelerating toward Park Avenue within 3 minutes. Into his phone, which he'd switched to Bluetooth, he said, Still okay? Still locked in my room. I can hear him out there, opening my wine, moving around like he has every right to be here. This is so typical of him, this complete disregard for boundaries. Has he said anything else? He's been talking through the door, saying I'm overreacting, that he just wants to discuss the project like reasonable adults, that locking him out is childish and proves I'm too emotional for leadership. Classic Victor. He violates my space, then makes me the unreasonable one for objecting. Evan navigated through evening traffic, his hands tight on the wheel. You're not unreasonable. He broke into your home. That's a crime, Sophia, regardless of whether he used to have a key. In my world, it's more complicated than that. We have shared history, shared professional obligations. If I press charges, I look vindictive. If I make this public, it becomes ammunition for the board members who already doubt my judgment. So he's counting on you staying silent to protect your professional reputation. Exactly. And the worst part is, it's working. I'm more afraid of how this looks than I am of him. Evan pulled up to the residences on Park Avenue, a gleaming high-rise that screamed wealth and exclusivity. A doorman in an immaculate uniform approached the car immediately. "I'm sorry, sir, but this is a no-parking zone. Residents only." Evan stepped out of the car, his entire demeanor shifting into something calm but absolutely immovable. "I'm here to see Sophia Langford, penthouse level. She's expecting me." The doorman's expression flickered with uncertainty. "I'll need to call up and confirm, then call, but I'm not leaving until I see her." Into his phone, still connected, Evan said, "Sophia, can you call down to your doorman and authorize me to come up?" "Already doing it," she replied, and Evan heard the click of her making another call. 10 seconds later, the doorman's phone rang. He answered, listened, glanced at Evan with new assessment, and nodded. "Yes, Ms. Langford. I understand. I'll send him right up." He handed Evan a visitor's badge and gestured toward the marble lobby. "Penthouse elevator is to your right. You'll need this badge to activate it." Evan took the badge and strode into the building, every step purposeful. The lobby was exactly what he expected. Soaring ceilings, modern art that probably cost more than his car, furniture that looked sculptural rather than functional. He scanned the badge and stepped into a private elevator that opened directly into Sophia's penthouse. The ride up felt eternal. Evan's phone was still connected, and he could hear Sophia's breathing, could hear Victor's muffled voice still talking through her bedroom door. "I'm in the elevator," Evan said quietly. 30 seconds. "Thank you," Sophia whispered. "I'm so sorry to drag you into this." "Stop apologizing. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose to come." The elevator doors opened directly into Sophia's penthouse apartment, and Evan stepped into a space that was somehow exactly what he'd imagined, and nothing like it at the same time. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the skyline spread out like a glittering carpet. The furnishings were modern and expensive, but somehow impersonal, like a very high-end hotel rather than a home. Everything was in shades of gray and white, beautiful and cold. And standing in the middle of the living room holding a glass of what was presumably Sophia's wine was Victor Hale. He turned as Evan emerged from the elevator, his expression shifting from surprise to recognition to something like amused disdain in the span of seconds. "Well," Victor said, his words slightly slurred, "if it isn't the hero from the restaurant, I wondered when you'd show up again." Sophia does have a pattern of collecting strays when she's feeling vulnerable. Evan ignored him completely. "Sophia, I'm here. You can come out." He heard movement from down a hallway, then the sound of a lock disengaging. Sophia appeared moments later, wrapped in a bathrobe with her hair still damp from the shower. Her face was pale but composed, anger burning in her eyes. "Get out, Victor," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor Evan could detect underneath. "I've asked you to leave multiple times. You're trespassing." "Trespassing?" Victor laughed, taking a sip of wine. "In an apartment I helped you choose? Where I still have a key because you trusted me enough to never change the locks? Come now, darling, let's not be dramatic." "You don't live here anymore," Sophia countered. "You have no right to be here. The key should have been returned when we ended our relationship." "Our relationship never really ended, did it?" Victor's tone was casual, but there was an edge to it. "We're still working together, still in each other's lives, still connected in ways that matter." His eyes slid to Evan. Unlike some people who insert themselves into situations they don't understand, Evan remained near the elevator, his posture relaxed but ready. He'd dealt with drunk and belligerent contractors on job sites before, men who thought volume and aggression could substitute for authority. Victor was the same type, just wearing a more expensive suit. "I understand perfectly," Evan said quietly. "A woman asked you to leave her home. You refused. That's simple enough for anyone to understand." Victor's smile sharpened. "And who are you to her exactly? The noble working-class hero? The simple man who doesn't understand the complexities of our world? Let me guess. You think you're saving her from something." "I think she asked for help, and I came. Everything else is noise." Noise. Victor set down his wine glass with deliberate care. Is that what you call a professional relationship that spans years? A business partnership that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars? The kind of history that doesn't just disappear because Sophia's having a moment of rebellion. It's not rebellion to want you out of my home, Sophia interjected, her voice rising slightly. This is my space, Victor. Mine. You don't get to just walk in whenever you feel like it. I needed to discuss the project modifications. You've been avoiding my calls, refusing to engage in productive dialogue about necessary changes. What was I supposed to do? Not break into my apartment. Sophia's composure was cracking, frustration and fear bleeding through. We have offices, we have scheduled meetings, we have professional channels for communication. You don't get to invade my personal space and then act like I'm the unreasonable one. Victor's expression shifted, calculation running behind his eyes. You're right, he said, his tone suddenly conciliatory in a way that made Evan's skin crawl. I apologize. I overstepped. I was frustrated about the project, worried about your judgment, and I let that cloud my boundaries. I'm sorry. The apology was perfectly delivered, the kind of smooth recovery that came from years of talking his way out of consequences. But Evan could see what Victor was doing, shifting the dynamic, making himself the reasonable one, preparing to turn this situation to his advantage. Thank you for apologizing, Sophia said carefully. Now, please leave. Of course. Victor moved toward the elevator, but slowly, like he had all the time in the world. Though I do think we need to discuss why you felt the need to call him. He gestured dismissively at Evan. Instead of handling this like adults. It speaks to judgment issues, Sophia. Escalation where calm discussion would suffice. And there it was, the pivot. Victor was going to leave, but he was going to frame this entire incident as evidence of Sophia's poor judgment. By morning, this would be a story about how Sophia had overreacted to a concerned colleague trying to discuss business, how she'd brought in an outside party to create drama, how her personal life was affecting her professional decisions. Evan saw Sophia realize this too, saw her shoulders tense as she understood the trap Victor was setting, even as he appeared to comply with her request. Actually, Evan said, his voice cutting through the moment with quiet authority, before you go, Victor, I think we need to clear something up. Victor paused, turning to face Evan with raised eyebrows. Oh? And what would that be? Evan stepped forward, positioning himself slightly between Victor and Sophia. Not aggressive, not threatening, just present in a way that couldn't be ignored. This pattern you have, Evan said calmly, of manipulating situations to make yourself look reasonable while making everyone else look unstable, of violating boundaries and then reframing the violation as the victim's overreaction, of using your position and your history to control people who've made it clear they want you gone. That pattern ends tonight. Victor's smile was condescending. I'm not sure you're qualified to speak about patterns in relationships you know nothing about. I know enough. I know Sophia asked you to leave her home multiple times and you refused. I know you used a key you should have returned to enter her private space without permission. I know you've spent the last 20 minutes trying to make her feel unreasonable for basic boundary setting. Those facts don't require insider knowledge. This is between Sophia and myself, Victor said, his voice hardening. You're an outsider trying to play knight in shining armor without understanding the complexities of our professional relationship. Then let me make the complexities simple. Evan's tone remained calm, but there was steel beneath it. Sophia asked you to leave. That request doesn't need context or justification. It doesn't matter what your history is, what your professional relationship entails, or what your intentions were. She said no. She said leave. That's the only complexity that matters. Victor's expression shifted, genuine anger finally breaking through his practiced charm. You have no idea who you're dealing with, do you? I could make one phone call and destroy whatever pathetic career you have. I could ensure that every construction project in this city refuses to work with you. Don't lecture me about complexities when you're so far out of your depth you don't even know you're drowning. Then make the call, Evan replied without hesitation. Destroy my career. Use your power and your connections and your influence. Do whatever you think you need to do. But you're still leaving this apartment tonight, and you're never using that key again. The two men stood facing each other, the tension in the room thick enough to cut. Sophia had gone very still, watching the confrontation unfold with something like disbelief on her face. Victor laughed, but it was a harsh sound with no humor in it. You actually think you're protecting her. That's adorable. Do you have any idea what you're protecting her from? A business discussion, professional oversight, the kind of collaboration that's made both of our companies successful. I'm protecting her from someone who can't accept that no means no, Evan corrected. Everything else is justification and rationalization. You're in her home without permission. That's not collaboration. That's violation. Violation? Victor's voice rose for the first time. I've given her everything. I mentored her when she was nobody, helped her build this company into what it is, stood by her when the board doubted her capacity to lead after her father died. And this is how she repays me? By replacing me with some working-class nobody who thinks he understands our world? I don't need to understand your world, Evan said quietly. I just need to understand that she wants you gone and you won't leave. That's enough. Victor's hands clenched into fists, and for a moment, Evan wondered if this would actually turn physical. He was prepared for it, had been in enough tense situations on construction sites to know how to handle himself, but he really hoped it wouldn't come to that. Sophia's voice cut through the tension, strong and clear. Victor, everything Evan said is right. You need to leave. Now. This conversation is over. Victor turned to her, his expression a mixture of anger and something that might have been hurt if it weren't so clearly performative. You're making a mistake, Sophia. Aligning yourself with someone like him. Burning bridges with people who actually matter in your industry. Letting your emotions override your business sense. The board is already concerned about your judgment. This will only confirm their worries. Then let them be worried, Sophia replied. And there was something fierce in her voice now, something that had been missing in the restaurant 2 weeks ago. I'd rather have their concern than your manipulation. I'd rather lose board votes than lose myself in trying to meet your impossible standards. I'm done, Victor. With your control, with your gaslighting, with your inability to accept that we're over in every sense that matters. We're not over professionally, Victor countered. I chair the committee overseeing your flagship project. We'll be working together whether you like it or not. Then we'll work together in professional settings with proper boundaries and witnesses. Never again in my personal space. Never again with you pretending we're anything other than hostile colleagues forced into collaboration. Sophia moved to stand beside Evan, her presence aligned with his in a way that was unmistakable. And if you ever use that key again, I will call the police regardless of how it looks. I will press charges regardless of the professional fallout. Do you understand me? Victor stared at her for a long moment, clearly recalculating his strategy. Then his gaze shifted to Evan, and something cold settled into his expression. You think you've won something here, he said quietly. Both of you, but this isn't over. Monday morning, the board meets again to review project progress. I wonder how they'll react when they learn about tonight. About Sophia's judgment in bringing an outsider into sensitive business discussions. About her inability to maintain professional boundaries. There was no business discussion, Evan interjected. There was you refusing to leave when asked. If you want to report that to the board, go ahead. I'm sure they'll be very interested in your version of events. My version will be believed, Victor said with absolute confidence. Because I have credibility, history, and influence. What do you have? A dinner date and a savior complex? I have the truth, Evan replied simply, and the certainty that I was right to come when someone needed help. Victor's smile was sharp and predatory. The truth is whatever the most powerful person in the room says it is. You're about to learn that lesson the hard way. He moved toward the elevator, pressing the call button. Enjoy your moral victory, Sophia. It won't mean much when the board removes you from the waterfront project entirely. The elevator doors opened, and Victor stepped inside. Just before they closed, he added, "Oh, and you should probably change your locks, for security purposes." Then he was gone, descending back to street level, leaving behind a silence that felt heavy with implications. Sophia stood frozen for a moment, then her entire body seemed to deflate. She sank onto her couch, her hands trembling slightly as the adrenaline finally caught up with her. Evan moved to sit beside her, close but not touching, giving her space to process. "Are you okay?" "I don't know," Sophia admitted. "Part of me is relieved he's gone. Part of me is terrified about what he's going to do Monday. And part of me can't believe that just happened, that you came, that you stood up to him, that you—" She trailed off, looking at him with an expression that held gratitude and something deeper. "That I what?" "That you treated it like it was simple, like I had a right to say no and have it respected. Victor spent so long making everything complicated, making every boundary feel like a negotiation, that I'd forgotten it could be that straightforward. Evan reached over and took her hand. It is that simple. You get to decide who's in your space. You get to say no without justification. Those are basic rights, Sophia, not special privileges. In my world, everything is negotiable. Every boundary is a potential compromise. Then maybe your world needs to change. Or maybe you need to remember that you get to set the terms, not just accept the ones other people offer. Sophia squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears she was too proud to release. Thank you for coming, for standing up for me, for not making me feel weak for needing help. You're not weak. You're exhausted from fighting alone for too long. There's a difference. They sat in silence for a moment, the city lights twinkling outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. The apartment that had felt cold when Evan first entered now felt more human, more lived in, simply because Sophia was present in it fully, rather than locked away in her bedroom. What do we do about Monday? Sophia finally asked. Victor's right that he has credibility with the board. If he frames tonight as me bringing personal drama into professional situations, if he uses our friendship as evidence of poor judgment, then you tell the truth. That he entered your home without permission, that you asked him to leave and he refused, that you had every right to call for help when he wouldn't respect your boundaries. They won't see it that way. They'll see it as personal messiness affecting business operations. Some of them will, Evan agreed. The ones Victor has already convinced. But the 5 who voted with you, the ones who believe in your vision for the waterfront project, they might see it differently. They might see it as evidence of Victor's character, his inability to respect boundaries, his need to control every situation. Sophia considered this. I'd need to get ahead of the narrative. Contact my board allies before Monday. Present my version of events before Victor can spin his. That's smart strategy, though I'd suggest presenting facts, not a version. What happened tonight isn't open to interpretation. He entered your home without permission and refused to leave when asked. Those are facts, and they're on your side. You make it sound so clear. It is clear. The complicated part is navigating the professional fallout, but the actual events of tonight? Those are black and white. Sophia stood and moved to the windows, looking out at the city she'd conquered in so many ways while still feeling trapped by it in others. I should call my lawyer. Document everything while it's fresh. Change my locks tomorrow morning. Contact my board allies and prepare for Monday's meeting. You should also eat something, Evan added. When was the last time you had dinner? Sophia turned back to him with a slight smile. Are you trying to take care of me, Evan Brooks? Someone has to. When's the last time you took care of yourself? I don't remember. The admission was quiet, vulnerable. I'm so used to being strong, being in control, being the one with all the answers. And then tonight happened and I completely fell apart. I couldn't handle Victor on my own. I needed to call you. Evan stood and crossed to her. Needing help isn't falling apart. It's being smart enough to recognize when you're in over your head. I need help all the time, with Emma, with work, with figuring out how to adult properly. The only difference is you're not used to asking for it. I don't like needing people. It feels like weakness. It's not weakness. It's human. Evan hesitated, then made a decision. Look, I know this is your space and you probably want to be alone to process everything, but I don't feel comfortable leaving you here tonight. Not after Victor just demonstrated he has a key and a willingness to use it without permission. Sophia's eyes widened slightly. Are you offering to stay? I'm offering to sleep on your very expensive and probably uncomfortable couch to make sure Victor doesn't decide to come back for round 2. Nothing more than that, just backup, in case you need it. You don't have to do that. I can call building security, have them monitor the elevator. I know I don't have to, but I'd feel better knowing you weren't alone tonight. And honestly, I think you might feel better too, even if you won't admit it. Sophia studied his face for a long moment, clearly weighing pride against practicality, independence against the relief of not being alone. Finally, she nodded. Okay, thank you. I would feel better having you here. Then it's settled, though I should text Rachel and let her know I won't be picking up Emma until morning. Emma? Sophia's expression shifted to concern. I completely forgot you had her with you when I called. I'm so sorry, Evan. I pulled you away from your daughter for my mess. Emma's having ice cream and movies with her aunt. She's fine. Better than fine. She's probably negotiating for a second dessert as we speak. Evan pulled out his phone. And this isn't your mess. This is Victor's mess that you're dealing with. Big difference. He texted Rachel a brief explanation that he was helping a friend with an emergency and would pick up Emma in the morning. Rachel's response came quickly. The friend? The one who gives you happy secrets? Tell her I approve of anyone who makes you smile like that. Emma's asleep. Take your time. Evan smiled at his phone, then looked up to find Sophia watching him with an unreadable expression. Your family sounds wonderful, she said softly. They are. Rachel's been my lifeline through single parenthood. Emma's the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm lucky. Yes, Sophia agreed. You are. She ordered dinner from a nearby restaurant that apparently delivered to penthouse residences. Thai food that arrived in elegant containers that bore no resemblance to the takeout boxes Evan was used to. They ate at her dining table, which could easily seat 12 but felt intimate with just the two of them at one end. The conversation was lighter than it had been, both of them deliberately avoiding the heaviness of Victor and board meetings and professional complications. Sophia told him about Rosa bringing her more garden tomatoes and her attempt to make them into sauce that had resulted in her kitchen looking like a crime scene. Evan recounted Emma's latest school project, which involved making a family tree that Emma had interpreted very literally, resulting in a tree with photographs of family members glued to actual leaves she'd collected from the park. She got in trouble because apparently real leaves aren't archival quality and they're going to decompose, Evan explained. But she was very proud of her literal interpretation. She sounds amazing. I'd love to meet her sometime. The words hung in the air, carrying weight neither of them was quite ready to acknowledge. Meeting Emma would mean this was more than just a friendship, more than a crisis connection. It would mean integration of their separate worlds in a way that implied future and intention. Maybe, Evan said carefully, when things settle down, when we figure out what this is. What do you think it is? Sophia asked quietly. Evan set down his fork and met her eyes. Honestly, I think it's something that could be really important if we don't let your world and my world and Victor and board meetings and all the complications destroy it before it has a chance to become what it might be. That's very diplomatic. I'm trying to be realistic. You're going through a professional crisis. I'm a single dad with limited time and energy. We barely know each other. Any rational person would say this is too complicated, too fast, too improbable. And yet I came tonight without hesitation. And yet I'm sitting in your penthouse eating Thai food and talking about Emma's school projects like it's the most natural thing in the world. And yet every time my phone buzzes with your name, I smile before I even read the message. Sophia's expression softened. I do the same thing. The smiling, I mean. My assistant commented on it last week, said I seem different lately. Lighter, somehow, despite everything with Victor and the board. Is that good or bad? It's terrifying, Sophia admitted, because the last time I let someone into my life this way, it was Victor. And look how that turned out. He used every vulnerability against me, turned every moment of trust into leverage, transformed what I thought was partnership into manipulation. I'm not Victor. I know you're not. Intellectually, I know that. But emotionally, I'm terrified of making the same mistake twice, of seeing what I want to see instead of what's actually there. Evan reached across the table and took her hand. Then we go slow. We take time to actually know each other instead of rushing into something because the chemistry is there and the timing feels urgent. We build trust through actions, not just words. I don't know how to go slow, Sophia confessed. I've spent my entire adult life moving fast, making quick decisions, trusting my instincts, and acting on them. Slow feels dangerous, like I'm giving doubt time to take root. Or giving certainty time to grow, Evan countered. Maybe slow isn't about doubt. Maybe it's about being sure enough that you don't have to rush. They finished dinner and cleaned up together, falling into an easy rhythm of clearing plates and storing leftovers. Sophia showed Evan where the guest bathroom was, provided him with a spare toothbrush and towels, and retrieved blankets and a pillow for the couch. I have guest rooms, she offered. You don't have to sleep on the couch. Guest room feels like I'm moving in. Couch feels like I'm standing guard. I prefer standing guard. Sophia smiled, genuine warmth in her expression. Thank you for everything tonight. For coming, for standing up to Victor, for staying, for just being here. Anytime. I mean that literally. Anytime you need help, I'm here. They stood in her living room, the city lights creating a soft glow through the windows, neither quite ready to say goodnight despite the late hour. "Can I ask you something?" Sophia said quietly. "Always. When you stood up to Victor tonight, when you told him that pattern ends now, did you mean it? Can you actually stop him from manipulating situations and controlling narratives?" Evan considered the question honestly. "I can't control what Victor does or how the board reacts, but I can be witness to what actually happened. I can stand beside you when you tell the truth. I can refuse to let his version of events go unchallenged. That's not the same as stopping him, but it's not nothing either. It's more than I've had before. Everyone else in my life either works for me or works with Victor or has some vested interest in the political dynamics. You're the only person who's just on my side. No agenda, no calculation. That's what friends do. They take sides. Your side specifically." Sophia stepped closer, and Evan's breath caught. She reached up and gently touched his face, the same gesture she'd made outside his apartment the week before, but this time it carried different weight. "I want to kiss you," she whispered. "Right now, I want to forget about Monday and Victor and all the complications and just kiss you." "But," Evan prompted gently, though his heart was racing, "but you were right before. We should wait. We should do this properly, when my life isn't in crisis mode and you're not my emotional support during chaos." "Very mature of you." "I'm trying." Her hand was still on his cheek, her eyes searching his face. "Though I'm not sure how much longer I can be mature. You make it very difficult to be sensible." "The feeling is mutual," Evan admitted, his voice rough. "But we've made it this far. We can wait a little longer." Sophia dropped her hand and stepped back, creating necessary distance. "Right. Waiting. Being sensible. Very adult of us. Extremely adult. I hate it." Evan laughed. "Me too." Sophia retreated to her bedroom, pausing at the doorway. "Good night, Evan. Thank you again for all of it." "Good night, Sophia. Sleep well." After she closed her door, Evan settled onto the couch with the blanket she'd provided. The couch was, as he'd suspected, incredibly expensive and incredibly uncomfortable for sleeping, but he didn't mind. He lay in the darkness, listening to the quiet sounds of the penthouse, the distant hum of the city below, and thought about everything that had happened. Victor's threats didn't worry him personally. Men like that made big promises about destroying careers, but rarely followed through when confronted with someone who didn't care about their influence. But he worried about Sophia, about Monday's board meeting, about the professional fallout she'd face for standing up for herself. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "Are you comfortable?" "As comfortable as a 6-foot man can be on a couch designed for aesthetics rather than actual human use," he replied. "There's really a guest room, very comfortable bed, no expectations or implications. I'm fine here. Go to sleep. Thank you for being here, for everything. Stop thanking me and go to sleep." A pause, then. "Evan?" "Yeah? I'm really glad I asked to share your table that night." Evan smiled in the darkness. "Me too. Now sleep. Tomorrow's going to be complicated enough without you being exhausted." "Good night." "Good night, Sophia." He set his phone aside and closed his eyes, though sleep was long in coming. The events of the evening played through his mind. Victor's arrogance, Sophia's fear and strength, the strange intimacy of sharing Thai food in a penthouse while discussing kindergarten art projects. Different worlds colliding in unexpected ways. And despite every rational reason why this was complicated and improbable and potentially destructive, Evan couldn't bring himself to regret any of it. Because somewhere between offering a stranger a seat at his table and sleeping on her couch to ensure she felt safe, something had shifted. Something that felt important and real, and worth the complications it brought with it. The city hummed its endless song outside the windows, millions of stories unfolding in countless apartments just like this one. But in this particular penthouse, on this particular night, two people from impossibly different worlds had found something neither had been looking for, but both desperately needed. Connection. Genuine, uncomplicated, honest connection. And whatever Monday brought, whatever Victor threatened or the board decided or the professional world demanded, that connection was worth protecting, worth fighting for, worth the risk of everything it might cost. Morning arrived with soft light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting Sophia's penthouse in shades of gold and amber. Evan woke to the smell of coffee and the distant sounds of the city awakening below. His neck protested the night spent on the designer couch, but he felt oddly rested despite the discomfort. He sat up to find Sophia already awake, standing in her kitchen wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked younger somehow, more relaxed than he'd ever seen her, despite everything that had happened the night before. "Good morning," she said, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "I wasn't sure how you take it, so I left everything out." "Just cream, thanks." Evan stood and stretched, feeling his spine crack in several places. "What time is it?" "Almost 7. I've been up since 5, couldn't sleep. I've already called a locksmith. He's coming at 9 to change all the locks." She handed him the coffee, their fingers brushing briefly. "And I've drafted emails to my board allies. I wanted you to read them before I send them, if you don't mind." Evan took the coffee gratefully. "You don't need my approval, Sophia. This is your business, your decision." "I know, but I value your perspective. You see things clearly without all the political baggage I carry." She gestured to her laptop on the dining table. "Will you read them?" They sat together, and Evan read through 3 carefully crafted emails that laid out the previous night's events with precision and clarity. Sophia had documented every detail: Victor's unauthorized entry, his refusal to leave when asked, the implied threats about Monday's board meeting. The tone was professional but firm, presenting facts without emotional embellishment. "These are perfect," Evan said. "Clear, factual, impossible to spin as dramatics or overreaction. You think they'll believe me over Victor? I think you're giving them the opportunity to make that choice. What they do with it tells you who your real allies are." Sophia nodded slowly, her finger hovering over the send button. "Once I send these, there's no going back. This becomes official. The board will have to address it." "And if you don't send them?" "Victor controls the narrative. He gets to Monday's meeting first, frames last night however he wants, and I'm left defending myself from a position of weakness." "Then send them." She did, one after another, and Evan watched the tension in her shoulders shift from anticipatory dread to determined resolve. This was Sophia in her element: strategic, decisive, taking control of situations rather than letting them control her. "Done," she said, closing her laptop with finality. "Now we wait to see how they respond." Evan's phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Emma wants pancakes and is asking when you're picking her up. Also, she drew a picture of you saving the friend, and it involves a cape and possibly a sword. Should I be concerned?" He smiled and showed Sophia the message. She laughed, the sound genuine and light. "I like the idea of you having a cape. Very heroic. I'll have to disappoint Emma on the cape front, though she's not wrong about the sword. I've been told I have cutting observations." He typed back to Rachel that he'd be there in an hour, then looked at Sophia. "I should go. Get back to Emma. Let you prepare for whatever responses come in." "Of course." But Sophia didn't move, didn't make any gesture toward the door. "Evan, about last night, about you staying, about everything you said to Victor, you don't have to explain anything." "I want to. I need you to understand that I don't make a habit of this, of calling men in the middle of crisis, of needing rescue, of letting people see me vulnerable. I've built my entire professional identity on being self-sufficient and in control. I know that, which is why last night mattered, because you trusted me enough to show me the parts that aren't always in control." Sophia set down her coffee mug and moved closer. "I've been thinking about what you said, about going slow, building trust through actions, about being sure instead of rushing. And I think you're right. But I also think we've already been doing that without realizing it. Every conversation we've had, every time you've shown up when I needed support, every honest moment we've shared, that's building trust. That's actions, not just words." Evan felt his heart rate increase. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe slow doesn't mean stopping. Maybe it just means being intentional. Being honest about what we're feeling instead of pretending we don't feel it because the timing is complicated." "Sophia, I like you, Evan Brooks, more than I've liked anyone in years. Maybe more than I've ever genuinely liked anyone, if I'm being completely honest. And I know my life is a mess right now, and I know you have Emma to think about, and I know every rational reason why this is improbable. But I don't want to waste time pretending I don't feel what I feel." Evan stood and crossed the distance between them, his hands coming up to gently frame her face. I like you too. So much that it scares me sometimes. Because you're right. Your life is complicated and I have Emma, and there are 1,000 ways this could go wrong. But, Sophia's voice was barely a whisper, but I think those complications are worth navigating if it means being with someone who makes me want to be better, who challenges me and trusts me and lets me see the real person behind all the professional armor. He paused, his thumb gently stroking her cheek. So yes to being intentional, yes to being honest, and yes to whatever this is becoming, as long as we protect it, instead of letting our separate worlds destroy it. That sounds like a plan. Sophia's hands came up to rest on his chest, and Evan could feel his heartbeat thundering beneath her touch. Though I have to warn you, I'm terrible at plans. I'm much better at improvisation. Then improvise. She did. Sophia rose on her toes and kissed him, soft and tentative at first, testing boundaries they'd both been so careful to maintain. Evan responded with equal gentleness, one hand sliding into her hair while the other settled at the small of her back, drawing her closer. The kiss deepened, weeks of tension and restraint finally finding release. There was nothing calculated about it, nothing strategic or performative, just two people who'd been circling each other, finally allowing themselves to connect without the barriers of should and shouldn't. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Sophia rested her forehead against his chest. We probably should have waited. Probably, Evan agreed, though he made no move to step away. But I'm not sorry we didn't. Me neither. She looked up at him, her eyes bright. Though this does complicate things. Everything about us complicates things. This is just one more complication. A very good complication. The best kind. They stood there for a moment longer, neither willing to break the spell of the morning, but reality intruded in the form of Evan's phone buzzing again, Rachel no doubt wondering where he was. I really do need to go, he said reluctantly. Emma's waiting, and I promised Rachel I'd be there by 8. I know. Sophia stepped back, creating necessary distance. Thank you for staying last night, for making me feel safe when everything felt out of control. Anytime. I mean that. Evan gathered his things and Sophia walked him to the elevator. Before the doors opened, she caught his hand. Monday's going to be difficult, she said quietly. Victor's going to push back against my emails. The board's going to have questions. There might be fallout that affects both of us. We'll deal with it together. Whatever happens, you're not facing it alone anymore. Together, Sophia repeated, testing the word. I like the sound of that. The elevator arrived and Evan stepped inside. As the doors began to close, Sophia called out, Evan? Yeah? When this settles down, when the board situation is resolved and things are less chaotic, I'd like to meet Emma, if that's something you'd be comfortable with. Evan's smile was genuine and warm. I'd like that too. She'd like you. Might even draw you with wings again. I'd be honored. The elevator descended and Evan watched the floor numbers tick by, his mind processing everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. He'd confronted a manipulative ex-boyfriend, spent the night on an uncomfortable couch, and kissed a billionaire CEO in her penthouse, while the morning light painted everything gold. His life had become something he barely recognized, and yet it felt more right than it had in years. Rachel was waiting at her door when he arrived, Emma already dressed and bouncing with energy beside her. His daughter launched herself at him the moment he appeared. Daddy, did you save your friend? Did she give you a cape? Aunt Rachel said there probably wasn't a real cape, but I think there should be. Evan scooped her up, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. No cape, baby. But yes, I helped my friend. She's okay now. Rachel studied him over Emma's head, her expression knowing. You look different. Different how? Lighter, like something shifted. She smiled. Must be some friend. She is, Evan admitted, not bothering to hide it. A very good friend. Emma wriggled down and grabbed her backpack. Can I meet your friend? I want to see if she's as pretty as I drew her. Maybe soon, Em. She's very busy right now with work. Okay. But tell her I said hi, and that brave people can still be scared. Evan laughed and thanked Rachel for the emergency babysitting. As he drove Emma home, listening to her chatter about the sleepover and the movies they'd watched, and the ice cream they'd definitely not eaten too much of, he felt his phone buzz repeatedly in his pocket. He waited until they were home, and Emma was occupied with her toys before checking the messages. 3 texts from Sophia, each time-stamped minutes apart. First response came in. Margaret Chen, one of my strongest allies. She's appalled by Victor's behavior and wants to meet before Monday's board meeting to strategize. Second response. David Okonkwo, also supportive, says he's been uncomfortable with Victor's aggressive tactics, but didn't have enough evidence to push back until now. Third response. This one's not good. Richard Morrison. He's questioning whether I'm being overly sensitive and suggesting that Victor's entry might have been a misunderstanding. He's clearly in Victor's camp. Evan texted back, 2 strong allies is more than none. Morrison showed you who he is. Believe him and plan accordingly. The response came quickly. You're right. I'm meeting with Margaret and David tomorrow afternoon. Want to help me prepare? I'm not a business strategist, Sophia. I coordinate construction projects. But you see people clearly. You understand manipulation and power dynamics. That's more valuable than business expertise right now. Evan looked at Emma, who was arranging her stuffed animals in what appeared to be a very serious conference. Em, how would you feel about maybe having a quiet day tomorrow? Daddy might need to help a friend with some work stuff. Emma looked up from her stuffed animal meeting. The scared friend? She's not scared anymore, but she still needs help being brave. Emma considered this with the gravity only 5-year-olds can muster. Okay, but can we have pizza for dinner tonight? Deal. He texted Sophia back. Tomorrow afternoon works. Where and when? My office? 2 p.m.? I can order lunch. I'll be there. Sunday passed in its familiar rhythm. Grocery shopping with Emma. Playground time. The elaborate bedtime routine that somehow always took twice as long as it should. But throughout it all, Evan's mind kept drifting to Sophia, to Monday's board meeting, to Victor's inevitable counterattack. Sophia called that night after Emma was asleep, her voice tired but determined. Victor sent his own email to the board. Completely different version of events. According to him, he stopped by to discuss urgent project matters. I overreacted to his presence, and I brought in an unknown civilian to create unnecessary drama. But did he mention that you asked him to leave multiple times? He framed it as me being emotionally unstable and unable to have professional discussions. He's positioning last night as evidence that I'm not fit to oversee the waterfront project. Evan felt anger rise in his chest. That's a complete distortion of what happened. Welcome to my world. Victor's specialty is taking facts and twisting them just enough that his version sounds plausible to people who want to believe him. What did your allies say? Margaret and David both sent follow-up emails supporting my version. Margaret actually used the word trespassing, which made me want to cheer, but I can feel the board splitting, half appalled by Victor's behavior, half convinced I'm being dramatic. Monday's going to be a battlefield. Yes, Sophia paused. Evan, I need you to understand something. If this goes badly, if Victor manages to turn the board against me, there could be serious consequences. I could lose control of the waterfront project. I could even lose my position as CEO if enough board members vote no confidence. I understand. And if that happens, if my professional life implodes because I stood up to Victor, I need to know that you won't regret being involved, that you won't look back at that dinner at Marcello's and wish you'd never offered me that seat. Evan's response was immediate and firm. Sophia, listen to me. Whatever happens Monday, whatever Victor does or the board decides, I will never regret meeting you. I will never regret offering you that seat or standing up to Victor or any of this. You hear me? Her voice was thick with emotion when she replied. I hear you. Good. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow we prepare, and Monday you go in there and fight for what's yours. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth, the October sun bright and almost mocking in its cheerfulness. Evan dropped Emma at school and made his way to Langford Holdings headquarters, a gleaming tower in the financial district that screamed power and prestige. The lobby alone was intimidating, all marble and steel and modern art that probably cost more than Evan made in a year. He gave his name to the security desk and was directed to the executive floor, where Sophia's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia who looked like she could run a small country, greeted him with professional warmth. Mr. Brooks, Ms. Langford is expecting you. She's just finishing a call. Patricia gestured to a waiting area with leather chairs and offered coffee, which Evan accepted gratefully. Sophia emerged from her office 5 minutes later, and Evan's breath caught at the sight of her. She was in full CEO mode, a charcoal suit that was clearly custom-tailored, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun, minimal jewelry, makeup that enhanced without softening. This was Sophia Langford, the billionaire businesswoman, and she was formidable. But when her eyes met his, some of the armor dropped away, and he saw the woman underneath, the one who'd shared Thai food in her penthouse and kissed him in the morning light. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice professional for Patricia's benefit, but her eyes warm. "Let's talk in my office." Her office was exactly what he'd expected. Corner suite with panoramic city views, modern furniture that probably had names he couldn't pronounce, awards and accolades displayed with tasteful modesty. But there were also small touches that felt personal. The tomatoes from Rosa in a bowl on her desk, a framed photo of what must be her father, and the white roses and lavender he'd bought her that first night, still fresh in their vase. "You kept them," he said, gesturing to the flowers. "They remind me that not everything has to be complicated, that sometimes the best gestures are simple ones." She closed the door and immediately her posture shifted, becoming less CEO and more just Sophia. "I'm so glad you're here. Margaret and David will be here in an hour, and I'm nervous about the strategy session." "Why?" "You know your project better than anyone." "Yes, but Victor knows how to make knowledge seem like obsession. He'll frame my passion for the project as inability to see its flaws. He'll use my emotional investment against me." Evan guided her to the couch in her office, sitting beside her. "Then you separate emotion from evidence. You present facts, data, projections. You make it about the project's merit, not your feelings about it." "I've tried that before. Victor always finds a way to make it personal." "Because you let him. You get defensive when he attacks, which is exactly what he wants. What if instead of defending, you simply redirected?" Sophia looked at him with interest. "What do you mean?" "Every time Victor makes something personal, you make it professional. He says you're emotionally invested. You say that passion for quality outcomes is what's made Langford Holdings successful. He questions your judgment. You point to the company's track record under your leadership. He tries to make it about you versus him. You make it about the project's long-term value versus short-term profit." Understanding dawned in Sophia's eyes. "Don't fight on his terms. Change the battlefield." "Exactly. He's expecting you to defend yourself personally. Don't. Make every response about the business case, the data, the measurable outcomes. Take away his ability to make this about your character." They spent the next hour rehearsing potential scenarios, with Evan playing the role of Victor and throwing out the kinds of manipulative arguments they expected. Each time, Sophia practiced redirecting, staying calm and factual, refusing to take the bait. By the time Margaret Chen and David Okonkwo arrived, Sophia was visibly more confident, her responses sharp and professional without being defensive. Margaret was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. David was younger, maybe early 40s, with the kind of presence that suggested he'd earned his board seat through merit rather than connections. Both greeted Evan with curious politeness, clearly wondering who this outsider was and why he was in their strategy session. "Evan's a friend," Sophia explained simply. "He's been helping me prepare for tomorrow's meeting. His perspective has been invaluable." "Perspective on corporate board politics?" Margaret asked, her tone neutral but questioning. "Perspective on manipulation and power dynamics," Evan replied. "I may not know your business, but I know men like Victor Hale. I've dealt with his type on construction sites, people who use intimidation and distortion to control situations." David nodded slowly. "And you're the one who was at Miss Langford's apartment Friday night?" "I am. I was there when Victor refused to leave after being asked multiple times. Everything in Sophia's email was accurate." Margaret exchanged a look with David, some silent communication passing between them. "We believe you," Margaret said firmly. Victor's email was full of his usual spin. Those of us who've worked with him before recognize the pattern. "The problem," David interjected, "is that 3 board members are solidly in Victor's camp. They'll believe his version regardless of evidence. 3 more are firmly with Sophia. That leaves 5 swing votes, and those are the ones Victor's been courting all weekend." "What's his likely strategy tomorrow?" Sophia asked, pulling out a notepad. Margaret leaned forward. He's going to push for an emergency vote to remove you from project oversight. He'll frame Friday night as evidence of professional judgment failure. He'll present his simplified project version as the responsible alternative, and he'll make it seem like he's trying to save the company from your emotional decision-making. Can he get the votes? Evan asked. Possibly, David admitted. If he convinces the swing votes that Sophia's becoming a liability, they might vote to protect their investments. Board members are risk-averse by nature. Sophia's hands clenched on her notepad, but her voice remained steady. Then we need to make the case that Victor is the risk, not me. We need to show that his version of the project sacrifices long-term value for short-term gains. Do you have data to support that? Margaret asked. I have projections, market analyses, community impact studies, and architectural reviews. 3 years' worth of documentation showing why the comprehensive approach works better financially and socially. Then that's what we present, not as defense against Victor's attacks, but as positive case for the project's merit. Margaret smiled. We don't argue with Victor. We simply present irrefutable evidence that your vision is sound business. They spent the next 2 hours going through every document, every data point, every argument Sophia could make. Evan mostly listened, occasionally offering observations about how Victor might spin certain facts, but mostly marveling at Sophia's command of her material. This was her world, and she was brilliant in it. As the meeting wound down, David addressed Evan directly. I'm curious, Mr. Brooks, what's your stake in this? Why involve yourself in corporate politics that don't affect you? Evan met his gaze steadily. Because someone I care about needed help. That's all the stake I need. Margaret smiled at that, something warm in her expression. Sophia, you've chosen your friends well. That's becoming increasingly clear. After Margaret and David left, Sophia collapsed onto her couch, the professional armor finally dropping away to reveal exhaustion underneath. Thank you. For today, for the strategy, for being here. You did all the hard work. I just helped you see your own strengths. You do that a lot. Make me see myself differently than I have been. Evan sat beside her, taking her hand. How are you feeling about tomorrow? Terrified, determined, oddly calm underneath the terror. She looked at him. Knowing you'll be thinking about me helps. Is that strange? Not strange at all. I'll be thinking about you too, probably checking my phone every 5 minutes for updates. I'll text you when it's over, whatever the outcome. I'll be waiting. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the city spread out below them through the office windows. Finally, Sophia spoke again, her voice quiet. If this goes badly tomorrow, if I lose the project or the board votes no confidence, I want you to know that I won't regret any of this. Meeting you, standing up to Victor, choosing to fight instead of compromising myself. Whatever the cost, it was worth it. Evan turned to face her fully. It's not going to go badly. You're going to walk into that boardroom tomorrow with your head high and your facts straight, and you're going to remind them exactly why they made you CEO in the first place. Not because you're easy to control or willing to compromise your vision, but because you're the best person for the job. You have a lot of faith in me. I have exactly the right amount of faith in you. You've earned it. Sophia leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder, and Evan wrapped his arm around her. They stayed like that until Patricia knocked gently to remind Sophia of her next meeting. I should go anyway, Evan said, reluctantly standing. Let you prepare. But I'm just a phone call away if you need anything. I know. That means more than you realize. He kissed her forehead, a gentle gesture of affection and support, then headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, he saw Sophia watching him, her expression a mixture of gratitude and something deeper that neither of them had quite named yet. The rest of Monday evening passed in anxious anticipation. Evan made dinner with Emma, helped with homework, supervised bath time, all while his mind kept drifting to Sophia and the battle she'd face tomorrow. Emma noticed his distraction and asked if his friend was still scared. Not scared, Evan assured her. Just getting ready to be very brave tomorrow. Will you tell her I'm thinking about her and that my stuffed animals are too? Evan smiled and pulled out his phone, typing a message to Sophia. Emma wants you to know she and her stuffed animals are thinking about you. Apparently they had a meeting about it and voted unanimously to send brave thoughts. The response came 20 minutes later. Please thank Emma and her stuffed animals. Their support is appreciated by me and my very stressed out coffee mug. How are you holding up? I've reviewed my materials 17 times. I've practiced my opening statement until I can recite it in my sleep. I'm as prepared as I can be. Now I just need tomorrow to arrive so I can stop anticipating and start doing. You've got this. I believe in you completely. That helps more than you know. Thank you, Evan, for everything. For seeing me, for believing in me, for standing beside me through this mess. Always. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you show them what you're made of. Good night. Good night, Sophia. Go be brilliant tomorrow. Evan lay awake long after Emma was asleep, thinking about Sophia in her penthouse, probably reviewing her materials one more time despite knowing them perfectly. He thought about board meetings and power plays and men like Victor who thought they could control everything through manipulation and intimidation. But mostly, he thought about the woman who'd walked into a crowded restaurant 3 weeks ago, exhausted and looking for peace, who'd taken the risk of sitting with a stranger and had somehow changed the trajectory of both their lives. Different worlds, yes, but sometimes different worlds collided in exactly the right way at exactly the right time, creating something neither could have predicted but both desperately needed. Whatever tomorrow brought, they'd face it together. Not as CEO and construction coordinator, not as billionaire and single father, but as two people who'd found something real in a world that often felt performative and transactional. And that, Evan thought as sleep finally claimed him, was worth fighting for. Worth believing in. Worth whatever complications came with it. Because some connections transcended circumstances and social classes and professional politics. Some connections were simply right, regardless of how improbable they seemed on paper. And this connection, forged over shared tables and honest conversations and quiet moments of vulnerability, was one of those rare and precious things. Worth protecting, worth nurturing, worth the leap of faith it required to believe that somehow, despite everything, it would work out. Tuesday morning dawned clear and cold, the kind of November day that felt like the city itself was holding its breath. Evan woke early, checked his phone immediately for any messages from Sophia, and found one time-stamped at 5:47 a.m. Couldn't sleep. Board meeting is at 10. I keep running through everything that could go wrong. Tell me something normal. Something that has nothing to do with boardrooms or Victor or any of this. Evan smiled and typed back, Emma lost her second front tooth last night. She's convinced the tooth fairy pays more for teeth that come out dramatically, so she staged an entire performance about how it happened. Oscar-worthy, truly. She also wants to write the tooth fairy a letter negotiating better rates. The response came within seconds. That's perfect. Please tell Emma the tooth fairy doesn't negotiate, but appreciates entrepreneurial spirit. And thank you, I needed that. You're going to do great today. Remember, facts over feelings, redirect instead of defend, and know that you've got people on your side. Including you? Especially me. Now go show them what brilliant leadership actually looks like. Evan got Emma ready for school, both of them moving through their morning routine with practiced efficiency. As he was buckling her into her car seat, Emma looked at him with serious eyes. Is today the day your friend has to be really brave? Yeah, baby. Today's that day. Will you tell her something for me? Of course. What do you want me to tell her? Emma thought carefully, her gap-toothed smile making her look even more earnest. Tell her that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the thing even when you are scared. That's what you told me before my first day of school. Evan felt his throat tighten with emotion. That's very wise, Em. I'll tell her exactly that. After dropping Emma off, Evan tried to focus on work. He had a client meeting at 9, a site inspection at 11, and approximately 500 emails that needed responses. But his mind kept drifting to Sophia, to what was happening in that boardroom, to whether Victor's manipulation would win out over truth and evidence. At 9:47, he texted her, Emma says being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the thing even when you are. Go be brave, Sophia. At 10:03, as he was reviewing blueprints with a contractor, his phone buzzed. Going in now. Thank you. For everything. Then silence. The next 3 hours were torture. Evan tried to work, tried to concentrate on structural load calculations and contractor schedules, but every 5 minutes he was checking his phone for updates. Nothing came. At 12:47, his phone finally buzzed. But it wasn't Sophia, it was a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Brooks, this is Patricia. Miss Langford's assistant. She asked me to let you know the board meeting is still ongoing but going well. She'll call you when it concludes. She also asked me to tell you the redirect strategy is working and that she hopes that means something to you. Evan laughed with relief and typed back, "It means everything. Thank you for the update." He went to the job site inspection with renewed energy, actually able to focus on the structural concerns his client was raising. By the time he returned to his office at 2:15, his phone was ringing with Sophia's name on the screen. He answered immediately. "How did it go?" "I won." Sophia's voice was shaking, but with triumph rather than fear. "Evan, I won. The board voted 8-4 to keep me as project lead and reject Victor's simplified proposal. 3 board members who'd been on the fence sided with me after seeing the comprehensive data. Victor tried everything, every manipulation tactic, every character attack, every attempt to make it personal, and none of it worked. Because you didn't let it work. You stayed focused on the evidence. Margaret said it was the best presentation she'd seen me give. David told me afterward that I seemed different, more grounded, more confident, less defensive. You were always that person. You just forgot for a while." "No." Sophia's voice was firm. "I became that person because you helped me see what I was capable of. The redirect strategy, the focus on facts over emotion, the refusal to fight on Victor's terms. That came from you." "It came from you," Evan corrected. "I just helped you remember your own strength." There was a pause, and then Sophia's voice dropped to something more intimate. "Can I see you tonight? I know it's Tuesday and you have Emma, but I really want to tell you all of this in person, to thank you properly. Emma's at her mom's this week, Tuesday through Thursday. So yes, absolutely. Where and when?" "There's a small Italian restaurant on 7th Avenue, Marcello's. Do you know it?" Evan's heart clenched. "I might have heard of it. What time?" 7? I know it's the same place where this all started, but it feels right somehow, coming full circle. 7 at Marcello's. I'll be there." After they hung up, Evan sat at his desk for a long moment, processing everything. Sophia had won. She'd faced down Victor and the board and her own fears, and she'd won. Not because of him, but because she'd found her own strength and wielded it with precision and grace. The afternoon crawled by. Evan responded to emails, updated project timelines, coordinated with subcontractors, all while watching the clock inch toward evening. At 6:30, he changed into clean jeans and a button-down shirt, checked his reflection in the men's room mirror, and headed for Marcello's. The restaurant looked exactly as it had 4 weeks ago. Warm lighting, the smell of garlic and basil, tables full of people celebrating their own stories. But this time, Evan wasn't looking for a quiet table alone. This time, he was looking for the woman who'd changed everything by asking for a seat. She was already there, sitting at the same table where they'd first met. But this Sophia was different from that exhausted woman who'd walked in desperate for peace. This Sophia sat with confidence, her shoulders back, her eyes bright with triumph, and something else that made Evan's breath catch. She saw him and stood, a smile transforming her face into something radiant. Evan crossed to her, and before he could say anything, Sophia wrapped her arms around him in a hug that spoke of gratitude and relief and connection too deep for words. "You came," she whispered against his shoulder. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I don't know. Part of me worried that now that the crisis is over, now that I don't need rescuing, you might realize this whole thing was just circumstantial." Evan pulled back enough to look at her face. "Sophia, I didn't come tonight because you needed me. I came because I wanted to be here, because I want to celebrate your victory with you, because being around you makes everything better, crisis or not." She kissed him then, right there in the middle of Marcello's, with other diners watching and the waitstaff pretending not to notice. It was different from the kiss in her penthouse, less tentative, more certain, the kiss of 2 people who'd stopped questioning whether this was real and had started accepting that it was. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, Sophia laughed. "That was very public." "You complaining?" "Absolutely not." They sat, and Thomas materialized with menus and a knowing smile. "Good to see you both again. Back to celebrate something?" "A major victory," Sophia confirmed. "Your best wine, please. We're celebrating properly tonight." Over dinner, Sophia's risotto and Evan's chicken marsala, the same meals they'd ordered that first night, She told him everything. How Victor had started the meeting with his version of Friday night's events, painting himself as the reasonable professional and her as the emotionally unstable CEO. How he'd presented his simplified project plan with slick graphics and financial projections designed to appeal to the board's risk aversion. He was so confident, Sophia said, twirling her wine glass. So certain that he'd win. You could see it in his body language, the way he controlled the room, and for the first few minutes I felt that old fear creeping in, the certainty that he was right, that I was going to lose. What changed? I remembered what you said, about not fighting on his terms. So when Victor finished his presentation and turned to me expecting a defensive rebuttal, I didn't give him one. Instead, I thanked him for his input and calmly presented my comprehensive analysis. 3 years of data, community impact studies, architectural reviews, market projections. I made it about the numbers, not about us. How did he react? He tried to interrupt, tried to make it personal again. Said my emotional attachment to the project was clouding my judgment, and instead of defending my emotions, I simply said, the data speaks for itself. My feelings about it are irrelevant to the measurable outcomes. Took all the wind out of his sails. Evan smiled, pride swelling in his chest. That's brilliant. Margaret said the same thing. After the vote, she pulled me aside and said it was the first time she'd seen me completely neutralize Victor's tactics. Said I seemed like a different person, stronger, clearer, less affected by his manipulation. You've always been that person. You just needed to remember it. Sophia reached across the table and took his hand. I keep saying this, but I don't know how to thank you properly. You've given me back something I didn't even realize I'd lost. Confidence in my own judgment, belief in my right to set boundaries, understanding that needing help isn't weakness. You don't need to thank me. Watching you succeed is thanks enough. Still, I want to do something that shows you what you mean to me. What did you have in mind? Sophia's expression shifted, becoming slightly nervous in a way Evan had rarely seen. I want you to meet someone. Well, two someones, technically. Rosa and her husband, Manuel. They've invited me to dinner this Friday night at their home, and I'd really like you to come with me. The Rosa who brings you tomatoes? The same. She's been asking about the young man who makes me smile at my phone, and I finally told her about you. She immediately insisted on meeting you, and when Rosa insists, you don't argue. Evan felt warmth spread through his chest. This was significant. Sophia introducing him to people who mattered in her personal life, people who weren't business contacts or board members. I'd be honored, though I should warn you, I'm terrible at making good first impressions with important people. You made an excellent first impression on me. That was different. You were desperate, and I had an extra chair. And now you have my heart, and I'm desperate to keep you in my life. The words came out before Sophia seemed to realize what she was saying. Her eyes widened slightly. I didn't mean to be that honest. Wine is clearly affecting my filter. Evan squeezed her hand. Don't take it back. I like the honesty. And for the record, you have my heart too. Have had it since you sat down at my table and admitted you just wanted 1 hour where nobody knew your name. That feels like a lifetime ago. It was 4 weeks ago. 4 weeks that changed everything. Sophia paused, seeming to gather courage. Evan, I know we said we'd go slow, that we'd be careful and intentional, but I don't want slow anymore. I want this. Whatever this is. I want you in my life properly, not just as crisis support or occasional dinner companion. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to meet Emma. I want you to meet the people who matter to me. I want to stop treating this like it might be temporary and start treating it like it could be permanent. Evan felt his heart rate accelerate. That's a big step, Sophia. Emma's already asking about you, and if she meets you, if she gets attached, and then this doesn't work out, I know the risk. But I also know that I haven't felt this certain about anything in years, maybe ever. And I think you feel the same way, even if it scares you. He did feel the same way. That was the terrifying part. 4 weeks ago, he'd been a single father with a simple life, and now he was sitting in a restaurant discussing permanent futures with a billionaire CEO who'd somehow become essential to his happiness. I do feel the same way, he admitted. But Emma has to come first, always. If we're going to do this, if we're going to introduce her into this relationship, then you need to understand that she's my priority. Not negotiable, not flexible. I wouldn't want it any other way. The fact that Emma is your priority is one of the things I love most about you. Love. There was that word, hovering between them like a question waiting to be answered. Is that what this is? Evan asked quietly. Love? Sophia met his eyes steadily. I think it might be. I think it might have been from the moment you offered me that seat without asking anything in return. And I think I've been falling deeper every day since. Evan stood, moved around the table, and kissed her with all the certainty he'd been trying to contain for weeks. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you too, he whispered. Completely improbably, possibly insanely fast, but completely true. I love you, Sophia Langford. Tears shimmered in her eyes. Say it again. I love you. I'm never going to get tired of hearing that. Good, because I'm planning to say it a lot. They returned to their seats, both grinning like teenagers, the weight of confession replaced by the lightness of mutual certainty. Around them, Marcello's continued its evening symphony, but inside their small bubble, the world had narrowed to just the two of them. So, Sophia said, picking up her wine glass, Friday night with Rosa and Manuel. Saturday, maybe we could do something with Emma? Nothing intense, just the park or ice cream. Let her meet me casually. She'll probably interrogate you about whether you're as pretty as she drew you and whether you have the wings she added. I'll do my best to live up to her artistic interpretation. They finished dinner talking about logistics and possibilities, making plans that felt both thrilling and terrifying. As they were waiting for the check, Sophia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression shifted. It's Victor. Evan tensed. What does he want? Sophia read the message, her eyebrows rising. He's apologizing. Says the board meeting was a wake-up call about his behavior. He's asking if we can meet to discuss transitioning the project oversight back to me fully. Do you believe him? Not even a little. This is Victor trying to save face and maintain some illusion of control. But it's also Victor admitting defeat, in his own twisted way. How are you going to respond? Sophia thought for a moment, then typed quickly and showed Evan the screen before sending. Victor, I appreciate the message. All project oversight transitions should go through official channels and include the full board. Please contact Patricia to schedule an appropriate meeting. Professional courtesy requires professional processes. Sophia, perfect, Evan said. Professional, firm, no personal engagement. I learned from the best. She hit send, then put her phone away completely. No more Victor tonight. No more board meetings or business politics. Tonight is just about us. Thomas brought the check, and this time when Evan reached for it, Sophia didn't argue. Your victory, your celebration, he said. I'm getting this one. They walked out of Marcello's into the cool November night, the city alive with its usual energy. Sophia slipped her hand into Evan's, the gesture simple but profound. Walk me home? She asked. Your penthouse or your actual home? Because I've only seen the penthouse. They're the same place, but I'd like to show you something I don't show most people. They walked the 15 blocks to her building, talking about everything and nothing. Emma's tooth fairy negotiation tactics, Rosa's insistence on proper family dinners, the construction project that was driving Evan crazy with permit delays, Sophia's plans for the waterfront development now that she had full control again. In her penthouse, Sophia led him past the formal living room and pristine kitchen to a door he hadn't noticed during his previous visits. She opened it to reveal a smaller room that was clearly her private sanctuary. The walls were covered with photographs, her father at various ages, her mother before the remarriage, childhood pictures of Sophia covered in paint or dirt or flour. There were bookshelves crammed with worn paperbacks and hardcovers, none of them the expensive coffee table books in the main living area. A comfortable reading chair sat by the window, a blanket draped over it, and a stack of books on the side table. The flowers he'd given her that first night sat on a small desk, carefully preserved. This is my real room, Sophia said softly. The rest of the apartment is what people expect. This is who I actually am. Evan walked through the space, taking in the details. There were awards and accolades here too, but they were mixed with participation trophies from childhood sports and art projects clearly made by young Sophia. There were photographs of her with Rosa, with employees, with people who clearly mattered more than their professional utility. Thank you for showing me this, he said. I wanted you to see that I'm more than the CEO, more than the billionaire, more than the woman who needs rescuing from her ex-boyfriend. I'm also just Sophia, who reads terrible romance novels and cries at commercials and collects rocks from places she's traveled because they're free souvenirs. Evan pulled her close. I know you're all of those things. I've known it since you told me about Rosa's tomatoes and watching reality television at midnight. You've been showing me the real you all along. And you still want this? Even knowing how complicated my life is, how much scrutiny you'll face as the person I'm with, how Emma might be affected by association with my world. I want this. I want you. All the complications included. Sophia kissed him, soft and sweet, then pulled back with a mischievous smile. Want to watch a terrible reality show and eat ice cream directly from the container? That's usually what I do on Tuesday nights. That sounds perfect. They settled on her couch, the formal, uncomfortable one in the main living area, with a pint of chocolate chip ice cream and 2 spoons, watching a reality show about people renovating tiny houses. Sophia provided commentary about the structural impossibilities while Evan pointed out the construction shortcuts that would definitely fail inspection. It was completely ordinary and completely perfect. Somewhere around 11, as the credits rolled on the 3rd episode, Sophia turned to Evan with a serious expression. Can I ask you something important? Of course. When you meet Rosa and Manuel on Friday, will you tell them about Emma? Rosa's been asking if you have children, and I didn't want to presume to share that information. I appreciate you asking. Yes, absolutely tell them. Emma's the most important part of my life. Anyone who's going to be in my life needs to know that. And Saturday, when I meet Emma, is there anything I should know? Things she likes, topics to avoid, how to win her over? Evan smiled. Be yourself. Emma has a highly sensitive radar for authenticity. If you try too hard or pretend to be someone you're not, she'll know. But if you're genuine, she'll love you. What if she doesn't like me? Then we'll deal with it. But Sophia, Emma's already drawn you with wings. She's decided you're special before even meeting you. You've got an advantage. Friday evening arrived with surprising speed. Evan had spent the week juggling work responsibilities and preparing Emma for the weekend ahead. Saturday, they'd go to the park and maybe get ice cream, and there was a possibility she might meet Daddy's friend Sophia. The one with wings? Emma had asked, eyes wide. Probably no actual wings, baby, but yes, that friend. Okay, I'll bring my drawing to show her. Now, standing outside Rosa and Manuel's modest home in a working-class neighborhood 40 minutes outside the city, Evan felt unexpectedly nervous. Sophia had picked him up in her Mercedes. She'd offered to take a cab to his place, but he'd suggested meeting at her building instead, not quite ready to introduce her to his apartment's peeling paint and Emma's scattered toys. You okay? Sophia asked, noticing his hesitation at the door. Just nervous. Meeting important people in your life feels significant. It is significant. Rosa's more family than employee. Manuel's like the uncle I never had. They matter to me more than most of the board combined. The door opened before they could knock, and a small, round woman with graying hair and the warmest smile Evan had ever seen pulled Sophia into a fierce hug. Mija, you're too thin. I can tell you haven't been eating properly. Rosa released Sophia and turned her attention to Evan, her eyes assessing but kind. And you must be Evan, the one who makes our Sophia smile again. It's wonderful to meet you, Rosa. Sophia's told me so much about you. All lies, I'm sure. But Rosa was smiling as she ushered them inside. Manuel, they're here. The house was small but immaculate, filled with the smells of home cooking and the warmth of lived-in love. Photographs covered every surface. Children, grandchildren, family celebrations. A large man with silver hair and laugh lines emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. Sophia, Manuel's voice boomed with affection. And this must be the famous Evan. Come, come. Dinner is almost ready. They were swept into the warmth of Rosa and Manuel's home, seated at a table clearly set with their best dishes, and served a meal that made Evan's mouth water. Manuel's famous arroz con pollo, Rosa's homemade tortillas, and enough side dishes to feed an army. Over dinner, Rosa asked Evan about his work, his family, his daughter. There was no judgment in her questions, just genuine interest. When he mentioned Emma's tooth fairy negotiations, Rosa laughed so hard she had to wipe tears from her eyes. This little one sounds perfect for you, she said to Sophia. A child who negotiates shows intelligence and spirit. I'm meeting her tomorrow, Sophia said, and Evan heard the nervousness underneath her excitement. I want her to like me. She will, Rosa said firmly, because you are good people, and children know good people when they meet them. After dinner, while Manuel was showing Evan his garden, winter vegetables carefully tended despite the cold, Rosa pulled Sophia aside in the kitchen. This one is different, Rosa said quietly, nodding toward where Evan stood admiring Manuel's tomato plants. Not like the other one. Not like Victor. I know, Sophia replied. That's what scares me. What if I don't know how to be with someone who's actually good? What if I mess this up? Mija, listen to me. You didn't mess things up with Victor. He was never right for you. He wanted someone to control, not someone to love. This Evan, he looks at you like you are the sun in his sky. But more than that, he looks at you like you are human, like he sees all of you and loves all of you. How can you tell all that from one dinner? Because I've known you since you were 22 years old and running yourself into the ground trying to prove you deserved your father's company. I've seen you with powerful men, wealthy men, men who looked good on paper. None of them ever looked at you the way this one does. Like you are precious. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. I love him, Rosa. It's crazy fast and completely improbable, but I love him. Then stop being scared and love him. Stop waiting for it to go wrong, and let it be right. Later, driving back to the city with Evan, Sophia was quiet, processing Rosa's words and the evening's easy warmth. Evan reached over and took her hand. That was wonderful, he said. They're amazing people. I can see why they matter so much to you. Rosa basically told me to stop sabotaging myself and just be happy with you. Rosa's a wise woman. She also said you look at me like I'm precious. Evan brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. You are precious. To me, you're everything. Saturday dawned bright and cold, perfect park weather. Evan had picked Emma up from her mother's that morning, carefully explaining that his friend Sophia would be joining them for the afternoon. The wing friend, Emma had announced, immediately running to get her drawing. Now, waiting at the park entrance with Emma bouncing excitedly beside him, Evan spotted Sophia approaching. She'd dressed carefully, jeans, a warm sweater, boots, her hair in a casual ponytail, trying to look approachable rather than intimidating. Emma saw her and froze, her eyes going wide. Then she whispered to Evan, Daddy, she's even prettier than my drawing, and she's tall. Does she have to be tall to have wings? Before Evan could respond, Sophia had reached them, crouching down to Emma's eye level with a warm smile. You must be Emma. I've heard so much about you. Your dad says you're an excellent artist. Emma thrust her drawing forward. I drew you. See, you have wings because you're special and purple hair because purple is the best color. Sophia studied the drawing with serious attention. This is beautiful, Emma. I love the purple hair. Do you think I should dye mine purple to match? Emma giggled. Maybe just a little bit, in the front part. That's an excellent compromise. I'll consider it. Sophia stood and met Evan's eyes, and he saw the nervousness there mixed with genuine affection for his daughter. They walked into the park together, Emma chattering about school and her loose tooth and her stuffed animal collection. Sophia listened with complete attention, asking questions that showed she was really hearing Emma's answers. At the playground, Emma insisted Sophia push her on the swings. As Evan watched his daughter and the woman he loved laughing together, something settled in his chest. This could work. This crazy, improbable relationship between a construction coordinator and a CEO could actually work. After the swings, they got ice cream, chocolate chip for Emma, vanilla for Sophia, coffee for Evan. They sat on a park bench while Emma ran around the nearby fountain, her energy seemingly limitless. She's wonderful, Sophia said softly. Exactly like you described. Smart and funny and completely herself. She likes you, I can tell. How can you tell? Because she shared her ice cream with you. Emma never shares ice cream. That's true love in 5-year-old terms. Sophia laughed, then grew serious. Evan, I know we're moving fast. I know there are 1,000 practical concerns we haven't addressed. Where this relationship goes, how we navigate our different worlds, what it means for Emma. But I want you to know that I'm all in. Whatever challenges come, I want to face them with you. Even the messy parts? The custody schedules and kindergarten recitals and sick days when I can't make plans because Emma needs me. Especially those parts. That's real life, Evan. That's the life I want. Not board meetings and charity galas and empty penthouses. I want mess and noise and ice cream sharing. I want this. Evan kissed her, gentle and brief because Emma was watching, but full of promise. Then we'll figure it out together. All of it. Emma ran back to them, slightly breathless. Sophia, do you want to see my stuffed animal collection? Daddy says you have to be special to meet them all. Sophia looked at Evan, who nodded. This was Emma's ultimate seal of approval. I would be honored to meet them, Sophia said seriously. They spent the rest of the afternoon at Evan's apartment, Sophia meeting each of Emma's stuffed animals by name and hearing their individual backstories, which Emma delivered with complete seriousness. Sophia asked thoughtful questions and never once looked at her phone or checked the time. After Emma went to bed, a process that took 3 stories and extensive negotiation, Evan and Sophia sat on his worn couch, the one that didn't match anything and had stains from various Emma-related incidents. Your apartment is perfect, Sophia said, looking around at the mismatched furniture and Emma's artwork covering every wall. It's a mess compared to your place. Your place is a home. Mine's a showpiece. There's a difference. You could make it a home. Our home eventually, if this keeps going the way it seems to be going. Sophia turned to him, eyes wide. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying that I love you, that Emma loves you, that I can see a future here, if you want it. Not tomorrow, not next week, but someday. A real future together. I want that more than anything. Sophia's voice was thick with emotion. A real home. A real family. You and Emma and whatever comes next. It won't be easy. Your world and mine are very different. Then we'll build a new world. One that fits both of us. They sat in comfortable silence, Sophia's head on Evan's shoulder, the sounds of the city humming outside. It was simple and ordinary and absolutely perfect. 3 months later, on a Friday evening in late February, Evan stood in Sophia's penthouse, which now had far more personal touches, including Emma's artwork on the refrigerator and a shelf dedicated to his daughter's growing book collection. Sophia had just returned from another board meeting, this one celebrating the groundbreaking ceremony for the waterfront project. Victor had quietly resigned from the board 2 months ago, taking a position at a firm in another state. The last they'd heard, he was telling people the move was strategic career advancement, but everyone who mattered knew the truth. How was the ceremony? Evan asked, pulling Sophia into a hug. Perfect. The mayor spoke. Margaret gave a beautiful speech about vision and leadership, and Rosa was there with her entire family, because I made sure units in the affordable housing section would be available to people like her. That's wonderful. The best part was when they asked me who I wanted to thank, and I said my partner, who taught me that real strength isn't about never needing help. It's about knowing who to trust when you do. Evan kissed her. I'm proud of you, for the project, for standing up to Victor, for everything you've accomplished. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. Emma burst through the door. They'd given her a key last month, which she wore on a lanyard and treated like treasure, carrying a backpack and chattering about her school day. Sophia, guess what? I got picked to be line leader tomorrow. That's like being in charge of everyone. That's amazing, Emma. Sophia crouched down for a hug. Did you tell them your leadership technique of be nice but don't take any nonsense? Exactly what I did. As Emma ran to her room, she had a room here now filled with duplicate toys and clothes, making the transition between Evan's apartment and Sophia's penthouse seamless. Evan watched Sophia with overwhelming love. This woman had walked into a crowded restaurant 4 months ago, exhausted and looking for peace. She'd taken the risk of sitting with a stranger, and in doing so, had found something neither of them had been looking for but both desperately needed. A real connection, a real partnership, a real future. Different worlds had collided that Friday night at Marcello's, and from that collision had emerged something beautiful and unexpected and absolutely right. What are you thinking about? Sophia asked, noticing his expression. About how glad I am that you needed a seat that night. About how one small gesture, offering to share a table, changed everything. Do you ever regret it? The complications, the scrutiny, the way our worlds are still trying to figure out how to fit together? Evan pulled her close. Not for a single second. You're the best thing that's happened to me since Emma. You've made my life bigger and brighter and infinitely better. You did the same for me. You gave me back myself. Reminded me that I could be strong without being alone. That needing people wasn't weakness. That real love existed outside of transactions and negotiations. Emma returned with a picture she'd drawn, this one showing all three of them together, standing in front of a building labeled Our Home in 5-year-old handwriting. She'd given Sophia purple streaks in her hair and Evan a cape, and herself a crown. For our family, Emma announced, handing it to Sophia. It's perfect, Sophia said, her voice catching. Let's put it on the refrigerator. As Emma carefully arranged her artwork with magnets, Sophia leaned into Evan. Our family, she whispered. I like the sound of that. Me too, more than anything. That night, after Emma was asleep and the city lights glittered outside the windows, Evan and Sophia sat together in what had once been just her penthouse, but was now genuinely their home. They didn't talk about board meetings or construction projects or custody schedules. They just existed together in comfortable silence. Two people who'd found each other against all odds and had chosen, every day since, to keep finding each other. The flowers from that first night, carefully pressed and framed by Sophia, hung on the wall of her private room, a reminder of simple gestures and unexpected beginnings. And somewhere in the city below, Marcello's continued serving its Friday night crowds, hosting countless other stories, some of which would be equally improbable and equally perfect. But for Evan and Sophia, their story had moved beyond that crowded restaurant, beyond crisis and conflict, beyond the complications of different worlds colliding. Their story had become something simpler and more profound, a daily choice to love and trust and build a life together, one ordinary moment at a time. And in the end, that was exactly what both of them had been searching for all along. Not rescue or drama or grand gestures, but genuine connection with someone who saw them completely and loved them anyway. Someone who'd offered them a seat when they needed one and had stayed beside them ever since.